Good morning to Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Shaiful Bahari Ismail, the Campus Director of University Science Malaysia. Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail, our first keynote speaker. And Yang Berusaha Profesor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor, the Dean of School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia, as our second keynote speaker. Professor Dr. Hairul Anwar Hashim, the Deputy Dean in Research, Innovation and Community Industry Engagement, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Fahmi Lim Abdullah, the Deputy Dean in Academic and Student Affairs Office, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Associate Professor Dr. Rafiah Supian, the Deputy Dean in Postgraduate Career and International School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Deans, Deputy Deans, Program Chairman, Professors, Associate Professors, Lecturers, participants of IPAS, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Postgraduate E-Symposium IPAS 2021. This E-Symposium is organized by the Postgraduate Committee and Postgraduate Club of School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia with the theme, Frontiers in Medical and Health Sciences. Hi, my name is Lau Jun Xian, your MC for today. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate for your time to join us today, and we hope you will find the programs that we have prepared to be fruitful and engaging. Before we start our program, I would like to request all of us to stand out for the national anthem, Negaraku, and the official song of USM, Menara Ilmu.
University Sains Malaysia, menara ilmu tercinta, jadi tumpuan antara bangsa untuk segala cita-cita. Berinovasi, berteknologi, berwawasan, berkualiti. Biar usaha kami bersemi, asrasnya lah bersemi. University Sains Malaysia, menara ilmu tercinta, jadi tumpuan antara bangsa untuk segala cita-cita.
Thank you, everyone. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Amir Rifaat Abdul Rahman to lead the Doa recital. For non-Muslim friends, You may do your own prayer. Please, welcome. Mr. Amirul, you may take your stage.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let us all start our dua with Al-Fatiha. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. The name of Allah, the most praises is due to the Allah, the Almighty, the Cherisher, and Sustainer of the world. May peace and mercy of Allah be upon His Prophet Muhammad, His family, companions, and followers. Ya Allah, may us speak with guidance, inspire us with pity, give us success for that which is the most pleasure, and employ us with what is most pleasing to you. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, make us enjoy moderation. Place us amongst the people of right behaviors. Guide us to the right conduct and righteous servants. Ya Jabbar, today we are gathering for the International Postgraduate E-Symposium 2021, opening ceremony organized by the PPSK Postgraduate Committee and Postgraduate Club of the School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Ya Quddus, give us your blessing upon our gathering today, from the start to the end. Please endure us all with peace, goodness, and blessing, and make our event a pleasant and memorable one. Make the days that we have gone through, starting with your mercy, continue with your blessing, and ended with thy forgiveness. And also make the days that we have gone through with guidance, and end with the victory of excellence. Ya Muhaimin, give us strength and show us guidance, and adjust our path and ways, such that we may get to know each other better, attain peace and harmony, and open the way for opportunities that benefit our nations, country, and the world. Ya Muzil al-Barakat, bestow peace to our beloved country Malaysia. Preserve us from any threat and disaster, neither man-made or natural disaster, especially the current COVID-19. And to you, Ya Allah, we ask for forgiveness, security, and prosperity upon us, our leaders, and our country. ربنا عليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا وإليك المصير ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Shaiful Bahari Ismail, Campus Director of University Science Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail, our first keynote speaker, and Yang Berusaha Profesor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor, the Dean of School of Health Sciences, as our second keynote speaker. Professor Dr. Hairul Hanwar Hashim, the Deputy Dean, Research, Innovation and Community Industry Engagement, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Fahmi Lim Abdullah, the Deputy Dean, Academic and Student Affairs Office, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Rafi'ah Supian, the Deputy Dean, Postgraduate, Career and International, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. All moderators, deans, deputy deans, program chairmen, professors, associate professors, lecturers, participants of IPES, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Postgraduate E-Symposium IPES 2021, and thank you all for joining us in this 2 days virtual symposium organized by the Postgraduate Club of School of Health Sciences, University of Science Malaysia. I would like to start off by introducing the theme for this year's symposium, the Frontiers in Medicine and Health Sciences, As such, we have been fortunate enough to have experts from across the field to be sharing their useful insights, knowledge, and perspective with us throughout these 2 days. On behalf of the organizers, it is our great pleasure to introduce you to the keynote and plenary speakers of our symposium this year. I am pleased to welcome Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail, Chairperson of Malaysian Qualification Agency MQA, Yang Berusaha Profesor Norazmi Muhammad Noor, Dean School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia as our keynote speaker. A warm welcome to our plenary speakers as well, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Zabidi Anwar, Professor Dr. Zabidi Azhar Muhammad Hussein, Pro Vice Chancellor of the International Medical University, Malaysia, Dr. Yodi Mahendra Datta, Vice Dean for Research and Development, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gajah Mada, Indonesia, Associate Professor Dr. Warakon Limbut, Lecturer for the Division of Health and Applied Sciences, Faculty of Science, Prince of Sofala University, Thailand, and Associate Professor Dr. Maizan Mohammed, Deputy Dean for Research and Innovation, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, University Malaysia, Kelantan. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we're truly looking forward to the unique perspective that you'll bring to this event. This year, the IPES 2021 holds a special place and brings an exceptional value to the organizers, as this is the first symposium held by the School of Health Sciences that is being conducted on a digital platform. This is an effort to continue making impact in the field of medicine and health sciences in the midst of an unforeseen COVID-19 pandemic that started last year. As to adhere to all safety measures, we encourage all participants to stay safe and maintain social distancing while attending our e-symposium. With that said, COVID-19 has sadly affected higher education institutions and the course of education across the globe. To cope up, we postgraduate students are focusing more on data analysis and academic writing, be it proposal or thesis, publishing manuscripts, and many more, instead of physically having evolved in our research activities. The IPES 2021 is organized to bring together academicians, educational researchers, and especially postgraduate students, while creating a great opportunity to meet new colleagues and developing a new research network. Hence, at the end of this symposium, I hope all participants will be familiar with various research perspectives, build social and academic support groups, and gaining insights on research-related issues. A part of that, we also hope that this symposium will continue to enhance your passion for science, innovation, and ingenuity, as well as gaining effective communication skills. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the speakers and participants for being part of this e-symposium. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the committee members of IPES 2021 for your continuous commitment and hard work in ensuring that this symposium goes smoothly as planned. I would like to conclude my speech by encouraging all participants to actively participate in all the activities and discussion for the next 2 days. So all the posters and oral and poster presenters, I wish you all the best. Thank you, stay safe and stay home. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, our program director, Mr. Amirul Faez and Shamsudin. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the technical issue just now. Next, I would like to invite our campus director, Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Shaiful Bahari Ismail, to deliver his opening speech and officiate this e-symposium. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Norazmi Muhammad Noor, the Dean, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Associate Professor Dr. Rafi'ah Supian, Deputy Dean, Postgraduate Career and International, School of Health Sciences, USM. Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Fahmi Lim Abdullah, Deputy Dean, Academic and Student Affairs, School of Health Sciences, USM. Professor Dr. Harul Anwar Hashim, Deputy Dean, Research, Innovation and Industry, Community Engagement, School of Health Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this morning for the opening of the International Postgraduate Symposium, or e-Symposium, IPES in short, 2021. On behalf of that campus, University of Science Malaysia, it is my privilege and honor to welcome all of you to the International Postgraduate E-Symposium, IPAS 2021. I would like to express my sincere and deepest gratitude and appreciation to all the participants and guests today, especially our special guests, Professor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail and Professor Dr. Mohd Abdul Wahab, for kindly accepting our invitation to be the keynote speaker today. And also, I must thank all the other speakers, including our local eminent speakers and also international speakers. I hope all the participants who join us today and tomorrow will gain as much knowledge as possible in the next session with our speakers. School of Health Sciences, Health Campus, University of Science Malaysia, offers diverse and yet holistic wellness-based postgraduate program, which aim to nurture future researchers and practitioners in various fields of health sciences. Therefore, in line with USM APEX agenda, which advocates the transdisciplinary cooperation and interaction to create new knowledge and moving forward to become a better nation. It is a privilege to be part of this event. This event will serve as a golden opportunity for postgraduate students in School of Health Sciences and also to the other postgraduate students from various institutions to introduce themselves to the peers, to initiate academic discussion, cultivate new research ideas, and create sustainable support groups. Express my sincere appreciation to the IPAS 2021 committee members and also Health Sciences Postgraduate Division who have held this event with excellence, even though we find it difficult to handle event like this, especially during this pandemic COVID-19. This is an excellent example of intuition in leading transformation and excellence in health sciences. So please stay safe, preferably stay at home, follow all the SOPs, and play our roles to end this pandemic, inshallah. So with that, with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officiate the International Postgraduate E-Symposium, IPAS 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Dr. Shaiful Bahari Ismail, for the inspiring speech. As mentioned by Yang Berbahagia Professor, this event offers a diverse yet holistic learner-based postgraduate programs which aim to nurture future researchers and practitioners in various fields of health sciences. Indeed, this is a golden opportunity for all postgraduate students. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have the one and only Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Asma Ismail, the chairperson of Malaysia Qualification Agency MQA Malaysia, as our first keynote speaker for today. Let me briefly introduce to you about our distinguished speaker for today. Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Asma Ismail is a woman of many firsts. She was previously the first female Vice Chancellor of University Science Islam Malaysia and University Science Malaysia. She also served as Malaysia's first female Director General of Higher Education and the chairperson of Malaysian Qualification Agency. Her current position is as the Ibn Sina Chair for Medicine at International Islamic University Malaysia. She also serves as an honorary professor at Institute for Research in Molecular Medicine in University Science Malaysia, an associate research fellow at the Biotechnology Research Institute, University Malaysia Sabah. Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Asma Ismail earned her Bachelor in Biology from the University of Nevada, Reno. She then received her Master of Science in Microbiology from Indiana University, Bloomington, and a PhD specializing in cellular and molecular biology from the University of Nevada, Reno. Her expertise is in rapid diagnostic for the infectious diseases, and she has worked on the rapid diagnostic test for the typhoid called typhoid, which was advocated by WHO. To hear such accomplishments is truly inspiring, and that makes us very blessed to have Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Asma Ismail with us today as our keynote speaker. The title of our talk is Performing Responsible Research and Innovation, Impact, Challenges, and Possibilities. The topic is very relevant for students like us who need to convey what we have learned effectively to the community. For this session, it is my pleasure to pass the baton to the moderator for this session, Dr. Nohida Natasha Abu Bakar from Biomedicine Program, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. Without further delay, please welcome Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Asma Ismail and the moderator Dr. Nohida Natasha Abu Bakar.
Okay, thank you to Ms. Chairperson for a nice introductions of the keynote speaker. Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. Welcome to the International Postgraduate E-Symposium 2021 or IPAS. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Noorhida Natasha Abu Bakar from Biomedicines Program, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia, and I'll be responsible for hosting these keynote sessions, and I'm glad to welcome Professor Dr. Asma Ismail, who will present a talk entitled Performing Responsible Research and Innovations, Impact, Challenge and Possibilities. And now, here is our special guest. Without further ado, I pass the baton to Professor Dr. Asma.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Thank you very much, Dr. Daya. Let me first of all try to share the screen. This is the first time I'm using StreamYard, so let's see whether it works or not. And please let me know whether you can see the slides, yeah?
Yeah, sure, Prof.
Share screen. And then, can you start to see the slide?
Not yet, Prof. You have to press share at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
And then choose. Okay, and then choose share screen.
Yeah. Okay.
And then please select share screen.
Yeah, I did that. And then I
All
still
right.
share.
So do you share entire screens, and does the image
Yeah,
display?
okay. It says share entire screen.
Yes, please share entire screen, not windows. Share entire
Yeah,
screen.
it's there.
All right.
So can you see it?
And then press on the image displayed. Can you see the
Yeah,
display?
okay.
All right. And
Yeah.
then click on share.
You are in the show. Okay. Can you see the the slides?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Okay, let me try again.
all right.
Share screen. Right.
Okay.
And then share again.
Yeah. And then
And then
click the blue buttons, share screen,
yeah.
and then choose entire screen,
Yeah, I have.
and then press on the image display. And then again click on share, the blue button at the bottom. You couldn't.
I'm going to try
Okay.
again. This is going to be complicated here. Share screen. Okay, entire screen.
Yes. So make sure that you click.
Okay, I can see it, but I can see it and then it disappears.
Okay.
I can see it, but it disappears. That's the problem. Can you see it now? Can you see it now?
Yes. Yes.
You can see
Prof.
the slide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm on. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and a very good morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Daya, for moderating, and also the MC just now for the kind introduction. I say good morning to Professor Saiful, the campus director, Professor Norazmi, the dean, the deputy deans, Mr. Amirul, the program director, all the distinguished guests and participants. Thank you very much to organizing committee for inviting me to share my thoughts on this topic, and I would like also to congratulate the organizing committee for organizing this particular conference. This is now going to be the new norm, and the faster they learn about how to do this, the better it is for future conferences. But congratulations for at least initiating this on the e-symposium. So let me begin by saying these are the objectives that I will cover, but because of the lack of time, I will now go straight to the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a changing world facing many unknowns with the disruptive technologies brought by Industry 4.0, the accelerating pace of change due to the digital age, the global economic crisis. Of course, we have the global competition due to globalization, and of course, the pandemic COVID-19. And all these have created a disruptive change in our lives, in our livelihood, and of course to higher education per se. And COVID-19, as you know, is an unprecedented global crisis, meaning there is nothing that we can fall back on in terms of experience. So we need basically global solutions to COVID-19. It's not about each country producing the solution. So the COVID-19 pandemic, however, has taught us many lessons and gaps that need to be addressed, and this need to be addressed fast. The first thing COVID has taught is about how the world now does science and research with the advent of COVID-19. The pandemic has taught us that in order for us to remain resilient, that means to bounce back, we need science to power our economy post-COVID-19. Whether you like it or not, STI is here to stay. And while political leaders lock their borders, we see enhanced collaboration and sharing among the scientists in a global race to develop what we call the people's vaccine, diagnostics, and therapeutics. We see scientists showing shared responsibility by repurposing their lab. They repurpose the design production facility, etc., to supply the much needed personal protective equipment. We also see a new thing, the sharing of information and knowledge. And during the crisis, personal KPIs to publish was set aside, and the findings were basically shared via online repositories even before peer review for publication. So in times of crisis, even though you do have the KPI becomes irrelevant. In times of crisis, the outcome or the impact is now more important than the outputs. So we see now, out with silo, we all now need to work together in a collaborative manner, in with collaboration and sharing. So this is what we are now seeing. And what we learn is that science is no longer to serve scientists, but science is for scientists to serve humanity. And this is where STI, I think, have played a very big role in providing some solutions to COVID-19. To serve humanity is a very nice, noble effort, but we also need to ask the question, what is the purpose of doing research? So to do that, we need to go back to basic. Research, I think, is done to enhance innovation and provide solutions to problems that threaten humanity. And most of us researchers, including the postgraduates, are motivated by the fact that their research would hopefully make a difference in the world. Well, the question is, how do we make that difference and generate knowledge that is beneficial? So the answer is very short. We need to perform impactful research. Of course, you can ask the question, we are all scholars in universities and we have professors in universities and all the academics and all the postgraduates, they're all working very hard to produce the papers. You can ask the question, are we not creating an impact now? Creating awareness via books and journals is creating, however, academic impact. But if you want to create knowledge for sustainable change in society, and if you want to make a difference, then you need to go beyond academia. You need to go beyond the academic impact. You now need to show demonstrable impact to society, and you need to be action-oriented to do that. So one way to create an impact is basically to provide solutions to SDGs and show mercy for all humankind. In Islam, it's called Rahmatun al-Alamin. So in impact, when we talk about impact, it is the effect, effect that research has beyond academia. And it has to be demonstrable or evidence-based. Impact is not about how you develop the vaccine. I see a lot of papers that's going to be that's going to be presented in this conference is about the how to develop the vaccine, or it's about finding or discovery of the biomarkers to make the vaccine. This is not what impact is all about. But impact is about whether the newly developed vaccine is able to reduce the spread of the disease or not. That means impact is results driven, not process driven, right? So therefore, it will shift now from doing pure research excellence towards a focus on research dissemination and making it awareness to society. And therefore, if we now want to shift to research, doing impactful research, we basically need to create an ecosystem and a paradigm shift among the academics as well, because they are the ones supervising the postgraduate. And we need to create this new ecosystem that is now conducive to realize impactful research. So for the ecosystem to be successful in creating impact and create a sustainable change in society, then the solutions provided by research must align the scientific and technological progress with the socially desirable and acceptable ends. In short, if you now offer a solution, that solution must be acceptable to society. It's not just acceptable to the peers, but acceptable to society. So to ensure that the solution provided is socially desirable and acceptable, you need to perform this new concept, which is called responsible research and innovation. I think in the whole of Malaysia, we have a lot of TNCs and they are all called TNC R&I, all right? And they stop short at using the word responsible research and innovation. I think the only university in Malaysia that has a TNC RRI is the Islamic University, International Islamic University, UIA. Because when Tan Sri Zul, our previous Vice Chancellor, goes there to be the Vice Chancellor, he now changed that to responsible research and innovation. So this is a concept that started by the European Commission early in 2013, but now most international grants are using the concept of responsible research and innovation. Horizon 2020, National Science Foundation of the US, they are all now changing. And if the researchers are not doing RRI, then the grants proposal will not be accepted. So RRI is to basically, when you perform responsible research innovation, it is basically to align all the scientific and technological progress that you do with such socially desirable and acceptable ends. That means it must be human-centric. It must now not be technology-centric. It must be human-centric, and it must now, whatever the results that you produce, has got to be acceptable to society. So it is a human-centric design. So what are the elements of responsible research and innovation? The element is high ethical standard. This is important. Ensuring gender equality, double important, Dr. Hidayah. And in the scientific community, right? Investing policymakers with the responsibility to avoid harmful effects of innovation, engaging communities when you're doing this, that is going to be affected by the innovation that you're going to do, and ensuring that they all have the necessary knowledge and understanding of what you're going to do and the implication of what you're going to do by making sure the community also understand in terms of science education, and whatever knowledge that you have created, it has to be open access. That means other people can access to that knowledge and not kept to your lab or to yourself only or to your cluster. Because the elements of RRI include public engagement. That means before you perform research, you need to meet in a quadruple helix and actually get the public engagement. You have to have creative and critical thinking. There must be the thinking of inclusiveness so that everybody benefit from what you're doing, and there must be open access. That means you got to share with others how you did what you did and the results that you obtained, so that other people can use it and change their own practices or shape the future with what they have learned from you. And then there must be the integration of ethics. There must be gender equality being taught through, science education need to be there, governance and policy need to be there. So this is a big effort at engaging the more than the quadruple helix to actually now focus the research that is on human-centric. And R&R, research and innovation, now when you perform, will no longer be just about creating frontier cutting-edge knowledge. That means you want to go for blue sky kind of thinking and the kind of moving the technology forward. Because that is when you put technology in the center. If you now put human in the center, we first need to ask, is the technology providing the solution or creating more problems in society? Like, for example, if you look at this on the right-hand side, where Time is saying, Time magazine, 2045, the year man becomes immortal, all right? With the possibilities of body enhancements that we're now doing with biotech and genetic engineering, it is possible to make man become immortal. But is this something that we want to do? This is the question that we need to ask. If you ask technology, technology can bring you to whatever you want to be done. But there is ethics, there is integrity, there's morality, there's a lot of reasoning that needs to be done if you now put human in the center and not technology in the center. So when we perform responsible research, I mean, if you have religion over there, 2045 may not happen. So when we perform responsible research in order to provide responsible and acceptable solution to humanity, when we start to do this, only then can high tech be resulting in high touch with demonstrable impact to society. So to perform RRI, we need knowledge. And this knowledge is not about your discipline knowledge. We need knowledge, overall knowledge, total knowledge that is attained by working together and engaging the quadruple helix to actually provide solutions to humanity. And it's no longer about how each discipline or how each researcher can now provide the solution. So with responsible research and innovation, you need to stop becoming just a desk researcher, which is what we are all doing now. We do literature review, we evaluate things, we say what is the situation now, we provide the solution is all done by literature review, and then we go forward with that. This is a desk researcher. So we need to actually now go beyond academia. You need to engage the quadruple helix to be able to do that if you want to create impact to society. And RRI basically connect the dots, right? In short, global issues, complex global issues would require not a linear kind of solution, more of an integrated ecosystem to basically connect the dots and provide the solution that can create sustainable change. So therefore, we need to total knowledge, as I say, about the subject that we want to now move in terms of research. And this can be done, like I said, via engagement with the quadruple helix. And this is where, when you start to do this kind of engagement, it will now allow for convergence of knowledge of the sciences, the non-sciences, indigenous knowledge from society, and then knowledge from the industry, and of course the community as a whole, as a large. So we need to have basically a strategic and systematic integration of the science, technology, religion, arts, humanities, indigenous knowledge, along with innovation, entrepreneurial, global mindset, basically to adequately meet the challenges of the 21st century. So if we're going to start to do that, obviously everything new that is about to happen, you're going to meet with a lot of criticisms, right? And people are saying, wow, if this is the case, you know, when I can become immortal and you start to put human in the center, you have religion, you have universal values, you have all this now start coming in, it may deprive me of moving blue sky research, all right? So this is one of the criticism that comes through. And then they say, okay, if we're going to do all this, I mean, like a postgraduate student now wanting to do research, right? It doesn't have the benefit of having this time of having engagement, etc. Everybody is just coming in wanting to do your master's 2 years, wanting to finish your PhD 4 years. Academy also want to get rid of you as fast as possible so that they can now move on. So when you start to do this, people will start to ask, what is the reward for doing RRI in a research culture? Especially when you have grants that is 3 years, you know, you got to finish everything. And RRI definitely will take longer time because you need to do all this engagement. In Malay, it's called banyak leceh. And of course, you're going to say, well, it's going to take longer to do all these things now because, you know, you need to provide the outputs because, you know, the university is asking you, where's the KPI, where's the 4 papers, where's the whatever papers that you need to do. And if you have to do all this engagement, you may not get all these things done within this 1 year. And therefore, is therefore, you know, not worth to do. That's why we say we just do research the way we do understand. That's why we are always stuck with academic impact and never going for the impact that society really needs, because that is what your research money is for, to bring back benefit to society, not to bring back H index and high citation for yourself. That is self-glory, but that is only the halfway journey. You need to now, from self-glory, move to now create. As I said, scientists and researchers are there to serve for humanity and not to serve yourself. So the question that we need to ask is that, does everything that matters need to be counted? This is the question. If you have number of papers, does that mean you are fantastic? Or does that mean, because remember, when you die, even Islam, God will ask you, what have you done with the knowledge that you have? It's not like how many papers you have. And even then, you know, Einstein, Mark Twain, anybody you ask, you will find people will say, if you have knowledge that does not benefit humankind, it's not good knowledge. So this is where now you need to see the advantage of RI. It is tedious to do, but it will be a huge learning experience when you now are integrated and guided by religion, by ethics, by universal values in what you do. And hopefully what you have done now, inshallah, will make a huge difference to society and humanity. Of course, you're going to ask the next question. Well, if I were to shift base to RRI, if USM was supposed to be RRI, because you, especially with an apex university that is carrying for the bottom billion, you should do nothing but RRI. And will now RRI be relevant in the future trends of research? Okay, let's look at the future, right? And the future players in the research ecosystem, there's two. One is the researcher, which is the postgraduates, academics, the researcher, versus the grant funders, right? So you ask the question now, what do the researchers want? They want to be ahead of the curve by working faster, more flexibly, increasing impact, and of course receiving better rewards for the research that they do. I ask the question, what do grant funders want? Grant funders, for the money that they're going to give you, right, regardless coming from the government or coming from philanthropists or coming from the industry, all want you to be able to show demonstrable impact to society. So what is the future of research 10 years from now? So 10 years from now, this is not like far away. How research is conceived, how research is completed, and how research is communicated will also change dramatically. So perhaps you may not understand this as postgraduate, you live in your own micro world, but academics need to now understand that with COVID-19, with the economic crisis that we face, you're going to see changes in the grant funding situation. It's no longer going to come from the government, right? Government will need to now be able to bounce back due to the economic crisis. So where will the grant funding come from? So there will be new funding models that will emerge, and the grant funders will be among the philanthropists, people who make it big out of this COVID and actually make a lot of money during the COVID times, and of course from the industry, but less now from the government. So, please expect that. So FRGS and whatnot may also not be there. But will, however, demand. So when you have a philanthropist giving you money or you have industry giving you money, they will all demand demonstrable societal impact. And whatever you do now must be accessible to the public, right? It cannot be simply to be kept by that particular university or by that particular lecturer. So to provide demonstrable impact, the research must go, again, as I said, beyond academia. And to ensure acceptance by society, we need to perform RRI, so that RRI, therefore, is very much relevant in the future. Now, that is if you have philanthropists or you have government funding. But if you have industry funding, then you know very well not all of the research data will be made available. If commercializable, all that data will be reserved. But after they have finished commercializing it, then that data will now be returned to public. All right. So, but regardless of accessibility of the data, you must remember, even industry to make money, it has to be the product that is produced must be acceptable by society. So even funding from industry will require that you perform RRI. And funding for exploratory or blue sky research per se will be reduced. The emphasis will now be the development of practical solutions. So in the future, fundamental cannot remain as fundamental. Fundamental now must move towards providing practical solutions. So tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, is about interdisciplinary collaboration that is now going to be aided by virtual reality and augmented reality tools, right? So the funders now will make sure, because this is their money, they will make sure that you are interdisciplinary, cross-institution, not just one university, must cross-institution, global collaboration, and insist on the sharing of data within your group and, of course, to the public once the research is over and whatnot. So the researchers demonstrating interdisciplinary skills are now going to be considered as the most successful researcher, and not researcher that is very inward and very much working alone or working with 2 or 3 people. Therefore, open access now will become very prominent, and the researchers are now rewarded more for collaboration and the usefulness of their research rather than based on novelty or being the first to publish in that field. So remember this, the future of research will insist on demonstrable impact to society, insist on global collaboration, and whatever data you get is now going to be open access. And how postgraduates will now be, of tomorrow, but not today maybe, but postgraduate of tomorrow, how do they now do research in the future? The way we do research is also changing. With the advent of artificial intelligence and all these other disruptive tools that we now have, we are now moving from bench science to coding using these virtual reality tools, because you can put whatever problem, and with the data accessibility, with the big data accessibility, you can actually now analyze the problem, and it can now even give the prediction what will be the end solution to the problem that you have raised. So this will be the reality in the future, since we all now maybe not for my generation, maybe not for the current generation, but I think the future postgraduates, the future academics will now be more technology and digital savvy. So even yesterday I was with the Young Scientist Network, and a lot of them are already now working on their PhD using artificial intelligence. So hopefully USM postgraduates, especially at PPSK, kita doakan, will also move for artificial intelligence in the way they do research. So digital savvy researchers definitely will want to work faster. They can now be able to reach all the information they need from the big data, and that is where now they start to analyze and splice the big data to now provide the solutions that they need. So there will be new ways created whereby quality is now no longer measured by Q1, Q2 to incentivize the researcher. That means impact is changing by moving now the situation to impact research. It is also now changing metrics for measuring of quality rather than H index or citation. And even publication is no longer about articles and journals Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, whatever. All this will now be reduced because, as I say, with even academic science, when we start to now have open access, you now know that it is not the papers that is going in, it's metadata that is now going into the open access platform. So the research article will still be valued as something you can tell stories on, but it will be atomized, meaning to say it will be so reduced with the growth and popularity of electric lab notebooks. That will be the future, and other tools that will facilitate now fragmentation of research and publication process, but they are still linked. So what this means is that with the help of artificial intelligence, the article that is published will evolve now from the regular paper that you are now writing, will now evolve now into a notebook style paper that will now contain experimental methods, your data and observation, what is your source code, what is your claim, and what's your insight. On the right hand side is to show to you a notebook style paper. So basically when this is now uploaded, because it has to be made accessible, you are actually sharing preprints of your work to communicate the research outcome. Therefore, publishing in journals as we do now, this work is done by Research Future by Elsevier. They also are now saying that it's no longer by publishing in terms of the papers that we are doing today. So you will see where and people are already sharing preprints, right? Because before being peer reviewed, etc. So this is the case as we see now for COVID-19, when the researchers are already communicating before they publish in a peer reviewed paper. So and the funder who is now funding the research obviously says that you need to now be engaging the public. The public will not understand these journals and articles that you're writing Q1, Q2. So basically the grant proposal must now be accompanied by a public engagement plan. How do you plan now after you do the research to communicate that finding now to society? And please do this writing and also the research research engagement in an easy to understand way. So basically things are changing from writing articles in that you learn to publish in Q1, Q2, and now it's going now to publication whereby it can make that's easy to understand, that is communicable to the layman, and help to increase public trust in science. So this is supported by increased access to the raw elements of the research. So it's very clear now that tomorrow's research is no longer going to be business as usual. It's going to be business unusual. And you got to be facing this soon enough. So maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about, but let me try to put this into action so that you can see what I mean, right? RRI in action. So when we talk about healthcare, you know already the future, we're going to be using robotics in the social and healthcare. And there are many things that we can use robotics for as a companion. You can see that they look very much like you as your companion. Or they say, okay, let's, because there's so many lonely people and so many lockdowns that we are saying, we are in our homes and we're in our small rooms, so we need a companion. And they say, okay, why not we create an animal-like companion? So you see Sony's Aibo there as a pet. But Robotics have also been used as a service robot that can now deliver, especially with COVID, where you don't want to have too many human interaction. So the robots can now be used, especially in our COVID hospitals. Of course, you're going to ask me, well, is this real? Well, to all the postgraduates, this is real, because for Malaysia, at least, we already launched the National 4IR policy on the 1st of July, early this month, in 2021. So the fourth industrial revolution is already upon us in Malaysia. And the emerging technology like automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, machine-to-machine learning, Internet of Things, blockchain, advanced materials, cloud computing, data analytics are all now changing the way we do things, not only in the world and also in Malaysia. So more recently, all these technologies have been used and in the global fight against COVID-19. Our data scientists at the Academy of Sciences Malaysia have been using this a lot in order to predict where the vaccine should go, how many shots of the vaccine, how many should we now make available in various places, how many did go for age of above 60, how many, and all that. All that data slicing was done by the data scientists at Academy to be able to help the people at KKM. So the National 4IR policy is an overarching national policy, basically, that drives the coherence in the transforming of the socio-economic development in the country through ethical use, right? So the country is also saying, yeah, technology is here to stay, is coming to Malaysia, but we want to use technology with ethics being to guide us. So the World Bank has also reported that with the advent of the automation, there will be a lot of people that will be replaced. And interestingly, automation is here to be able to do repetitive jobs so that we don't get bored. But most of the repetitive jobs are actually jobs held by women. So that will mean now, with the advent of automation, a lot more women will also be out of a job. So the 4IR policy basically understood that. And that's why we say, okay, there will be things that technology will use to be enhancing our work, but there must be also the ability for the country to equip the rakyat with the people with the 4IR knowledge and skill sets that will now no longer create that skill gap that we're going to face if now technology is coming into the country, or which is already is. So the policy is a new kind of approach. It's a whole government approach where all the action plan initiatives of the various ministries and entities will now be aligned in steering the country towards achieving a balanced, responsible and sustainable growth by leveraging on technology adoption and innovation. So in short, even the National Fourth Industrial Revolution policy for the country now has elements of RRI embedded, but unless, of course, like all Malaysian blueprints, we are very good in creating the blueprints, but it is not communicated well down the line to all the little Napoleons, then implementation will not be successful. Okay, let's bring you back to robots being used in the social and healthcare. So the use of this disruptive technology, as I said, in Malaysia, healthcare is also upon us. Robots, basically UNESCO defined it as artificial beings possessing the four characteristics of mobility, interactivity, communication, and autonomy. All right, and these robots, they are clever because they are powered by artificial intelligence. And with artificial intelligence, they provide the robot with the ability to reason, to communicate, and to learn from the perception of the surrounding environment, and also to learn from past experiences and even errors, right? So it is artificial intelligence that enables the robot to respond to in socially interactive ways with the humans. So the robots, when we first developed the robots, it was meant to move automation. to take over, as I said, repetitive jobs in the assembly line of the manufacturing industry. But with the technologies advancing at the breakneck speed that we see now for robotics and artificial intelligence, and what with IoT and all that, the robots now are finding new application in the factories. Now they're coming into business, and now they're coming to your homes. And the past decade has seen now a rapid growth of research in the area. While the robots start to come into your house, the ethics of robotics is now also being done to make sure that everything is okay and within morality and integrity is still there. So maybe you want to ask first, what solutions do robots provide in the social and healthcare? So in response to challenges related to aging, as you are aware, Malaysia is considered as the most aged country in Southeast Asia, but we also have the highest in terms of obesity. So like I said many times, we are going to be landed with obesity, but we refuse to die because we also have a very long life. So we develop care robots basically to support the elderly, the debilitated people living at home, because while your parents can take care of you, but yourself, you cannot take care of your parents because you've got your work, you have work-life balance, you've got problems, etc., and you don't have support, and so therefore you leave your elderly and debilitated people at home. So now with the as we move now to complicated surgical procedures like precision surgery, we also now go for robotic surgery that will now improve greater access to structures, improve dexterity, reduce tremor, etc. So for precision surgery, we use robotic surgery. Now with COVID, we have service-based robots, and now that we are at home most of the time, so that the women don't have to end up being taking care of the house, taking care of the work, and work-life balance now become very blur between professional and work. So we have service-based robots now to replace maids, and they perform chores like cleaning, the little robot that just go around the floor that you send around. The robots are now used to deliver food to COVID patients in the hospital, and also now we see some restaurants in Malaysia also start to have robots to deliver the food. But in Japan, I've seen drones now being used to deliver food to the elderly, especially if they are located in the high-rise apartment and those with joint pains, they can't come down the elevator. The drones have now been used to fly up to their windows and deliver food to the elderly or people who cannot come down from the apartments. And they're socially interactive robots. They behave as companions to lonely people. So when this is what happened when we lack now human interaction. We are more with the computer, we are more with the Facebook, but we lack this human interaction, and that makes a lot of people very lonely. And they now have these robots that become pets, or they have robots that become their boyfriend or girlfriend. That is what we call pets, and all the way to humanoid robots that is now used as human companions. So the robotic solutions to social and healthcare on the surface, it's like, wow, this is a good one. This is a solution for all our problem. This is what happened when you put technology in the center. When technology is put in the center, everything sounds hunky-dory, right? Because we say, we scan what is the problem right now. So we say, okay, what is the problem statement? And we say, it's so difficult to get maids nowadays. Somebody has to take care of my mom or my dad who is debilitated, and I've got to work, and work-life balance already stressful to me. Having to do hardcore science is even worse because I've got to be in the lab most of the time, and who's going to be able to take care? It's like 24/7 you have to take care of the debilitated. So therefore, what's your solution? Let's have a robot, because this robot, a care bot, what we call care bots, caring robots, they can actually do a lot of the things. So let's see now, what kind of solution do we want out of these robots, right? So this robot can be a social companion. Yes, appearance as a humanoid. You can now have these robots take care of your mom or your dad, and that will be very good. And we say, guarantee to the customers that this robot must be safe and avoid of harms. Okay, we can do that. And then we say, okay, let's replace this robot with labor, because it's so difficult to get nurses nowadays, and who wants to stay 24/7 in your house? The nurse also have got to go home, and then when the nurse goes home, who's going to take care of your mom and dad that is rehabilitated? So let's have the robot, because the robot will now be able to replace the labor. You don't have to pay for Indonesian maids and so on and so forth to come, and therefore this now become the human care. It can now replace the human caregiver. And then we say, wow, robots, we want the robot to be autonomous, meaning to say, let's not work at all. Let's make sure the robot does everything. As with robots, they have models. So you have basic model that can do just basic things, or if we can afford it, let's go for model Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4 of the robot, so that we can now have better, as we pay more, that robot can do more things, like what? Like moral reasoning, like that can now reason if something happens and reflect upon its action. So let's go for this, and basically, for the money that you want to spend in buying this robot for your mom or for your dad, you can say, okay, it can now do more and more human-like behavior. So basically, we can now say, we can continue to ask the questions and say, let's how to do it, let's move this on to that. And we say, and the questions that we pose can continue to be answered by science, so that now the care bot is now behaving more and more like a human being. But the question is, how far do we want to go? And whether we are in the position now to play God. All right. So these are the questions that you want, that now, if you put technology in the center, if you perform RRI, you got to face the truth. If you put human in the center, there are many ethical concerns to address for care bots, right? Like, for example, replacement of labor. Just ask the question, replacement of labor. Are the robots introduced to solve problems in healthcare and elderly, or are they introduced to save money by replacing the human caregivers with the robots, and to help the robotic? And also, if you now start to do that, is this advertisement that's going to come for the kind of robots that's produced is actually now helping the robotic research and robotic industry. So this is something that you also need to be aware of. When nurses or maids are difficult to get to care for the elderly, you also have to ask the ethical question. Does that mean you are abandoning the elderly by handing them over to the robots, which is devoid of human contact? So what happened to the family structure? Are we breaking down the family structure? Do we really attain good healthcare by using these robots, or are we covering our guilt that because we are not there with mom and dad, that it's better that we buy a more expensive robot? The more expensive robot, the better the robot can take care of your mom and dad. But actually, are you not abandoning the mom and dad? So in terms of autonomy, if robots are autonomous and used for therapy for children, for example, should the robot now be supervised? Or you're going to say, no need for supervision because this robot can take care of everything. And exactly, do you actually trust the robot to do everything without direct human intervention? So this is the kind of thing you need to ask. And if you now put the robot as a social companion, especially to children, you give the Sony eyeball, and the child now sees this companion, this robot, as the companion, as his friend. So this is encouraging now social emotional involvement. You see older people also now being given these robots as companion, because nobody comes to the old folks home nowadays. So therefore now this socio-emotional involvement, actually now people get to love this, and are you not creating deception in terms of social emotional? In terms of responsibility, if you now have this robotic surgery and you have this robots doing the work, and the surgeon only need to press the button, allow the bots to go in, and then press the button, bring the bots to come out. If the bots go in and they create and they fire up and they destroy the eye, who's going to be responsible? Right? For what happens? Is it the human or is it the robot? The same thing. If you have the caregiver being replaced now by the robot, and the robot did something and like lifting the patient, and then what happens is that the patient now got some accident. The robot has created an accident, and that created probably death or more injury to the elderly. So who's going to be responsible? Is it the human or is it the robot? So, and exactly what is the role and task of the robot? Should they assist or take over all the human tasks? Then if humans are responsible, what if they cannot control the robots? Like I said, when the surgeon press the button, the bots goes in and they go into the eye and they do the eye surgery. But during the line, if something goes wrong, is that surgeon responsible? So this is the kind of thing that we want to ask. Again, moral reasoning. What if the robot is being used now to make sure they deliver medicine on time, and that the elderly will take? You are assuming that a human being follow all the instruction of a robot. What if your mom or dad, the elderly, refuse to take the medication? What would then the robot do? All right, will the robot now allow that person to die? So this is the question that we have to ask. And as robots become more and more autonomous, that means you allow the robot to do moral reasoning, you teach morality, you teach a lot of things to the robot, and they can do machine learning. So shall we now put all that trust, leaving the ill, the elderly, and the children to the care of the robots? What if you say, well, I trust? Are you sure you can trust? Because what about safety and avoidance of harm? So we say robots should not harm people and be safe to work with. This is the first robotic law that is there in the country. But what if there is no act or no policy or no certifying body to say that this robot is safe to be used in Malaysia? So who will now ensure safety of the robots? Do you see the difference? If you are talking about technology-centered, things will be very fine. But if you now perform responsible research and innovation, there's a lot more questions that you need to ask. So when we use something like robotics in taking care of the elderly or the ill people, right, we see many ethical concerns because of the gap between innovation and practice. So the current way of doing research is that the researchers will gather, as what is now happening, in a multidisciplinary mode, but still researchers coming from multidisciplinary mode. And what are you guys doing? You are actually doing desk design. You do values-based, but desk design without actually engaging the quadruple helix, including the nurses who are the caregivers. So the proposal then, if you do what you're doing now, you will take it to the ethical committee, the ethical committee will pass, and then you will perform the research. So all this values-based thinking is actually done at the desk. You don't really collaborate, you don't engage with the quadruple helix. But you find now that when you start engaging with the quadruple helix, there's a lot more questions that you need to ask. So being technology-centric, people who are practicing caregivers will not be consulted because they are not part of this researcher team that they understand artificial intelligence or they understand augmented reality and so on. So, and you don't ask the community whether they really need the robots, or are you now breaking the family structure? And we need to basically discuss with the community and agree on shared solutions. So basically, how can we now bridge the gap between innovation and practice? Again, by performing RRI, responsible research, whereby the technology that you are now using should be aligned and acceptable to society. So what are the issues, gaps and challenges when you start using care bots? Simple thing that I'm showing to you when you start using care bots. So when people start to realize this, they have this care ethics for the ethical design of care bots, right? And because why? Because there's no policy in the whole world. There's no policy about how now should we do this care bots. So in view of the limitation of care bots in providing care to humans, so this is where now the ethical committee have provided this guide that a robot, when you develop a care bot, it should only play an assistive role in giving care instead of replacing the human caregiver. So even though the technology and your ability to develop artificial intelligence with IoT and everything else, but something has got to stop. So this is where the ethics is now saying it's not simply moving technology to frontier, use and change technology as and when it is morally okay to do that. So the patient should now, this is the answer to all the care bots, the patient should continue to take care of, to the extent possible, his or own health, and use the robot only to assist but not to replace. All right, so the nurse should continue to play the supervisory role in taking care of the patient, including exercising supervision over the robots. And because to lift the person can be very heavy, so this is where the robots are used to raise and take care of the patient, but the nurse must supervise the robots. So in addition, even the designer, that means the researcher themselves, is also responsible, has into consideration the specific caring trust. So when they are designing the robot, they also have to take care of that specific caring task. So in short, when you start to put RRI in action, you find that everybody is responsible, but not the robots, right? So the human caregiver or the nurse, including the designer of the care bots, and even the patient himself, is going to be morally responsible for the implementation and use of the care bots. And this basically guide came about after they did RRI on care bots. So fortunate for us, on 28th of June 2021, finally, I told you before, when CareBot starts coming in, there was no ethics, there was no law or policy regarding the use of the CareBot. So people were just doing this at their own, on their own. And now, 28 June 2021, World Health Organization issues its first global report in artificial intelligence in health, and therefore offers 6 guiding principles for the design and use of robots and in disruptive technology for healthcare. So the whatever that I've shared with the care bots in terms of the care ethics is in line with the WHO recommendation. So why do we do this? I mean, if you want to play God, you can, but something has got to stop you, right? And that is conscience, that is values, that is religion, that is spirituality, universal laws that need to stop you from doing this. So the lack of instinct to do the needful, this is what happened. Why is it that some people do this and some people say, hey, hello, this is not something we need to do? So this lack of instinct among people who continue to do this frontier without thinking should have been tackled when young. And this is the possibility, is that we need to now move back to education being the key. The problem with us is that with the children, we always ask this question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? We continue to ask this of the children, but these are the millennials that is now going to be the future, that is going to be digital savvy, and they're going to be living in the kind of world that I just described. And basically, we should stop asking what do you want to be when you grow up, but ask the question, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? So basically, this concept of humanizing education, where we now say human center in all the design, right? So this should have started from young in the schools. If when young, these children are challenged with problem solving, but immediately on instinct, they will put human in the center first before they do the problem solving, then we probably will have, by the time they get to become an adult, like a postgraduate like today, they would not have any problem about putting human in the center, and that everything else will evolve around the human. And they probably by now, they will have solved some of the major challenges of SDG and some of the major challenges of the world. So this probably should be what we need to do, because if we don't do this, all right, the human-centric education now becomes very important when we are faced, because we are going to face with VUCA, like volatility, uncertainty, and a lot of the unknowns that is going to face in the future. COVID-19 is just one unknown, and unprecedented means you got no experience to fall back to. So if you have no experience to fall back to, more technology will come, more disruptive, that is going to create a lot of unknowns, right? What will now happen if technology is advancing faster than the policies and governance. You see, the care boards are in use for a long time, and then only as recent as June, WHO finally got some guideline on ethics on how to do. If not, how did the ethics committee approve all these care boards development previously? What guide did they use? So in the case of robotics for Malaysia, understand this, ladies and gentlemen, that we have no national coordinating body in setting the direction, the coordination, and the monitoring of the overall national robotic agenda. Believe it or not, right? We have no specific national robotic act. So again, who's control the robots that we make? And we also have no certifying body to ensure standard and safety regulation to catch up with the rapid challenges in technology. So again, what's going to happen if we start to do this? So without any guide or without any restriction, who is now guiding the ethics committee, and who is now, and because there's no policy, there's no act, how can you stop anybody from doing anything on the robotics, right? So this is why we say, even though we are teaching robotics, we are teaching now in engineering robotics, there are things that need still to be done. And this is where Academy of Sciences comes in now. We have the National Robotic Roadmap to now ensure that all these coordinating body, National Robotic Act, now come into being. So because if we are not careful, technology will end up controlling us. So in short, I want to say that the future should move towards humanizing education, because with the advent of artificial intelligence and robotics, we need to sit down. We need to ask if smart machines can actually outthink us. Or are there certain elements of human judgment that is so indispensable in deciding some of the most important things in life? This is something that we need to now address. So imagine the explosive combination of artificial intelligence with IoT, with blockchain, with biotech, with bioscience, all that in developing innovations for humanity. So if allowed to play God, we can even, as we see in the front page of The Economist, we can essentially with CRISPR actually edit humanity. So it's important to underline responsible research and innovation basically strengthen and support the humanizing of education and learning experience. So because of the fact that we are going to face with a lot of unknowns in the future, and knowing the fact that regulation and policy cannot catch up with the innovations being used using disruptive technology, I think all of us, all the academics, all the postgraduates, we all need to be trained to do responsible research and innovation. So there is modules and whatnot that is there to train people back to do responsible research and innovation, and hopefully that the researchers of tomorrow need to be credentialized with responsible research. They have to go through the course, they have to be trained and show the credential before they can hold a grant. So hopefully that will be the future. So the philosophy also needs to come back to induce critical thinking among the students when they are now performing the experimental design. And we also need to think about one's own thinking and under self-reflection. Are we doing what we need to do so that we can now expand our learning experience? So, ladies and gentlemen, humanizing education is not just for you to perform research and innovation. Essentially, it's for everything that we do. Even the academic program that we design, the research that we design, all this. And one way we can find out best is by undergoing community engagement. And that is why USM, I know, is the #1 university for community engagement because of our APEX agenda, but make sure that we remain to be the #1, because if not, other universities will also take over. So human education basically needs to be, human-centric education needs to be the DNA of our higher education, right? So with that, I say let us now work together to create a better future for humanity. So thank you to all, and also acknowledge Academy of Sciences Malaysia for the some of the sources and information that I need in order to deliver this particular talk. So back to you, moderator. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Prof. Asma. I hope you all enjoy these amazing presentations. So, do we have a little time for 1 or 2 questions for Prof. Asma? do we allow to ask questions? I think maybe I can start the first questions, Prof.
Yeah.
Just one question. Okay. So actually, we see that the research, innovations, and business
It
communities
says that
are
no
working.
Q&A.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. There's no quick Q&A also. It's okay. Okay. All
but
right,
why not?
Prof.
I listen to your question. What do you want to ask?
Okay. So actually, we see that the research, innovations, and business communities are working frantically or desperately to support emergency responses and government actions. We are actually witnessing real-time collaborations between scientists across the globe in a race to develop the production of vaccines as well as antiviral medications. And the industrial sectors is repurposing production processes to produce health supplies on a large scale. So we can see also the technology innovators and startups are teaming up to provide solutions to the most pressing issues. And this is actually a race against the clock. And these challenges highlight the importance of STI as the key factors in any scenarios of emergence from the crisis and economic recovery. So the urgent question now is how to facilitate these efforts, Prof, especially the RRI, such as the cabots that you just mentioned, based on the existing capacities in our country. So can you comment on that before we finish the
Basically,
session?
first of all, it's regarding the policies, right? So the policies, as president of the Academy of Sciences, we are now working on the nano robotic roadmap. So meaning to say, the country needs to know what exactly do I want to now do in terms of robots, because they are here to stay and they are here in the factories. They are here now for healthcare. So what do we need to do? So that's why Academy will now be informing to the Prime Minister what we need to do and put the step by step. But essentially, it can start in the university. It can start even in PPSK on a smaller basis. Like first of all, you can even ask PPSK TNC, Deputy Dean for Research, to actually now say, okay, from now on we will start to do responsible research. Even though your name is still R&I, but you perform it in a responsible way and having that. And what is that? That is having engagement. Nothing is stopping the postgraduate or even the academics from calling. So now we see in the various universities now that they understood this, they call the webinar. But webinar is for stakeholder engagement. So it can be done, and a lot of knowledge, and the stakeholder, because they don't have to travel, you can get a lot of stakeholders that can come in at any one time, coming from industry, from society, from nurses, from all that, to now give you some ideas. What kind of knowledge that we need, what exactly is the solution that is required by society, that's acceptable by society. So I think the webinar allows for that flexibility to happen, and I think it should now take off now that you know this is the direction for the future. And I think that postgraduate need to be taught this, because they cannot go on thinking that life will be the way it is now at PPSK or at USM. It's times are changing, and they're changing very fast. My problem is that can the academic catch up with this change? Because if the academic can catch up, then it's easier because they can transfer the knowledge to the student. But if the academic also cannot catch up, then I think we need to have a separate discussion on this. But as you are aware, many of the postgraduate now are already into artificial intelligence. And however, our academics are not. So basically now the future is using big data. And we are seeing this at academy that we need big data in order to now provide the solution for the country. We cannot have the solution piecemeal. It has to come on big data, and this is now metadata. And so you're going to see changes in how people appreciate quality of work. So, but we are still into the ranking mode. We are still into the publish or perish mode. That's why I say if you want to go forward, a lot of things have got to change. And this is where the university, with IIUM, for example, with Tan Sri Zul, KPI is not about publishing. KPI is about creating impact.
All
So
right.
you can see different leadership will ask for different things from the
Yeah.
university. So it all starts with the number one. What you gonna do? And if the number one doesn't have it, then ask Norazmi. He better be able to deliver some of the things. That's a challenge to
All right.
begin.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you again,
Uh,
Prof. Asma, for answering the questions and for the great presentation. So it was a pleasure to have you with us. So this concludes the keynote sessions, and thank you all for listening. We hope you have learned and enjoys the presentations. Thank you again, Prof. Asma.
yeah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail and our moderator Dr. Nihat Darasa Abu Bakar. It was a very precise and relevant sharing session. I'm very sure all of us here can relate to the topic just now. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the IPAS committee, I would like to apologize once again for the technical issue just now. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to apologize on behalf of Professor Dr. Mohd Ajar Wahab, the head of Academic Department Faculty, National Research Center, Cairo, Egypt, that he is unable to join us today. Instead, we are joined by Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor, the Dean of School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia, as the second keynote speaker. Let me briefly introduce to you our second keynote speaker for today. Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor is a professor of molecular immunology. He obtained his bachelor with honor from Monash University, Australia, and his PhD from Flinders University, Australia. His main research activities are in the development of an improved vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics for tuberculosis. He has more than 150 scientific publications in peer-reviewed journals. Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor has research collaborations with several institutions in Mexico, Spain, Chile, Japan, and Australia. He frequently seeks in national and international review panels for research grant proposals, including recently a special grant for research into COVID vaccine development by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MOSTI, and other related COVID research by the Medical Research Council, United Kingdom. Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi has also frequently reviews scientific manuscripts for publications in prestigious journals, including Science and Nature group of journals. He has also been invited to give many talks on the biotechnology industry and on his research, including more than a dozen talks on COVID-19 during the last few months. He is also involved in many strategic planning for research in for the Ministry of Higher Education and MOSTI. He is also an advisor to several biotechnology companies. Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor's scientific contribution to the country was recognized when he was inducted as a Fellow of Academy of Sciences Malaysia in 2012. And he had also received Marie Curie European Commission Fellowship and National Young Scientist Award. And that makes us very blessed today to hear from him about COVID-19 vaccination, benefits and challenges, which is a very relevant topic for us, especially during the pandemic. For this session, it is my pleasure to pass the baton to Professor Dr. Hamidan Jam Muhammad for Nutrition Program, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia as the moderator. Please welcome Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor and the moderator for this session, Professor Dr. Hamidan Jam Muhammad.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Okay, can hear you very well. thank you very much for accepting the invitation. It is a great honor to have Prof. Norazmi with us today. And the title, which is COVID-19 Vaccination, Benefits and Challenges, is a very relevant title that for the conference participants to listen. And I've been told that it's about 2-hour lecture. I'm not sure.
Okay, so just give that from you.
Okay, Prof, everything's okay there?
Yeah, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You can hear me well because StreamYard, I can only see myself and I'm not sure whether everybody else is listening or this is time for your break.
So far, it's clear. Yes.
All right, good. Alhamdulillah. So I'm happy to be here, and I think this is a great time for us to share certain things about this very new disease that we still do not know many things about. Okay, so in fact, if that's the case, then there will be a lot of things to discuss. Boleh on? Yeah.
Unminimize? Okay. On it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Share screen.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
This is the problem.
Share screen semula.
Yeah. You're gonna share balik.
Oh yeah, share screen. Yes. Share screen.
Okay.
Okay, screen. Okay. Okay, go to screen.
All right. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
So, can you see? Can you see the screen?
No.
You cannot see my screen.
No.
I guess I have to get someone again come back. Sorry, my experience with using
Okay,
screen.
something, I can see just now.
All right.
I
Okay.
saw it uploading just now.
Oh, I see. So it takes some time. Never mind.
Yeah, maybe that's lagging.
Okay. I hope you can see. It's already on my screen, and
yeah, now it's okay.
All right. Okay. Good. So we are on.
Okay. Perfect.
So there are many. Okay. Okay. So there are many things to discuss, in fact, on COVID-19 per se, even many more, even for vaccination of COVID-19. So you've not given me enough time, not for the talk, but for me to prepare. So what I'm going to give you maybe only is for about 1 hour, and therefore you can leave for lunch earlier, I guess. But let's do this a bit more relaxed way, in a relaxed way, and you can ask questions after this, because I think this is a very important topic. And COVID-19, with all the problems that is with it, there are some few good things also. The one that is probably best described is that it has brought science to the forefront. Now, everybody is talking about science, and as students of science, myself and all of you, we must actually understand the importance of providing good information, and this is to act against ignorance and also misinformation, and also outright anti-science. So it has put to the fore the importance of scientific knowledge, and as students of science, therefore, you are going to play a major role. And COVID-19 has also put forward the intricate balance and connection between various fields. We talk about hard science or applied science, but now we also have to understand about social science, economics, political science perhaps, and also to understand human behavior in helping us to control the pandemic. So there's a lot of things that are now bind and intertwined together when we talk about COVID nowadays. So it's not only about the science, but it has also opened up the opportunity for scientists like ourselves to also know about other things as well. Now, because of social media, therefore, there's a lot of misinformation as well as disinformation. So misinformation, silap, you say something that you shouldn't say. And this comes from people who are also professors, but they are not in the area itself. Or disinformation, primarily purposely providing information that is false to scare people away. And there's a survey that has shown that 10% of people who would not take the vaccine because of this disinformation as they would if there's no disinformation. So everybody seems to be an expert now. They keep on talking about COVID-19 as if they have been doing work on it. Even the religious teachers are becoming more and more expert in COVID-19. And this is a problem. So it is our job as scientists to spread the right message. And for us to spread the right message, perhaps we need to read a lot, and we have to be aware and understand basics of the COVID-19. I'm going to concentrate on COVID-19 vaccination though, for this particular talk, and the benefits and challenges. And there's a lot that is already around. And when I prepared this talk about the same topic a few months back, the information is slightly different than today. So you can see that this is a flux of information coming in because it's a new disease. We do not know a lot of things about it. So, you have to keep on updating yourself about this. But make no mistake, okay? COVID-19 is here, okay? A lot of people initially thought that it's just made up and so on. This is just to show you this is an apoptotic cell in blue infected with the SARS-CoV-2 particles. And this was isolated from a patient sample. So it's not in vitro. It's actually actual patient sample showing cells dying with the virus in pink, colored pink, in this micrograph. So it's something real. And so far, 200 million people has now got COVID-19. And of these, about more than 4 million has died. That's about 2% of people who have died from COVID-19. And 4 million is probably very close to the whole of Singapore. 200 million, maybe slightly less than the population of the US, maybe. So you're talking about a global pandemic that is real, okay? So I don't have to stress so much on that because I'm sure believe that COVID-19 exists. And we look at the number of cases per million. There's about 10% of people in US, in Israel, in Brazil, close to 9%, in UK and Europe, 8% have already got the COVID-19 disease. And Malaysia now is also infamous for this. We are above world average, you can see that. And we hope that we can bring this down as soon as possible. Total confirms COVID-19 cases per million population within this region. Malaysia is a champion here, above world average, and we are even higher than India and a lot of the Southeast Asian countries. So that's something that we need to be aware of. And if you look at the graph of Singapore, it's virtually flat because they have no additional major additional new cases. Before, considering August last year, they were the highest, and Malaysia was just somewhere there. So situations are changing within each country, and therefore you would understand, even being close together, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, we have different environmental factors, social factors that has resulted in the number of cases to be extremely, very, very different within each country. So there's something to learn about this as well. So therefore, if we look at this particular picture here, the average daily cases per 100,000 people, Malaysia is very red. So as red as Namibia, I think Zimbabwe or Namibia, I cannot remember the name of that country. But there's a lot of, we are probably the reddest. We are this region here. And again, when we look at per million population, We are dark colored, not as dark as the rest, but we're still very dark. But in a way, although we have high cases, the number of deaths per million, we are not as high, and some people have attributed that to a little bit on the genetics, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that at the end of this talk. So that's all the information that we have so far. So COVID is here, is very devastating to so many people. And this is from yesterday's statistics, more than 98% of COVID-19 positive patients have no to mild and moderate symptoms. So alhamdulillah, that's the case for most of people who get COVID-19, category 1 and 2, and maybe only 1.5% goes from category 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this is probably, it's good to know that majority are asymptomatic and have only very mild symptoms, but because of that, it is more difficult to control. Okay, I want you to actually understand this. When the disease is mainly asymptomatic, it is very difficult to control the disease. This is different from SARS, which has about 20% mortality, and Ebola and MERS, which has about 35%, 40% mortality. So because of the severity of those diseases, it's easier to control, because when people get the disease, they just fall flat. So you can actually know who actually has the disease. Whereas for SARS-CoV-2, because of the asymptomatic and mild symptoms, people just go out and still think that they are not infected. So that's the problem with this. And because of this respiratory disease, it spreads more easily compared to, for example, HIV, which needs to have very close contact to have disease. So overall, in the world today, if we look at the vaccines that have been produced, at the moment, 8 vaccines is already currently being used. And these vaccines are in phase 4, post-licensure surveillance. We'll talk about all these phases later. 19 are still in phase 3 clinical trials. 108, 123 levels of 123, and 184 is in preclinical development. And you may ask, why so many vaccines? Well, this is a vaccine that is needed for 7 billion people. And we still do not know whether we're going to need boosters. And I guess every country in the world is trying to make their own COVID vaccine, a COVID-19 vaccine, just in case that we will need these vaccines for the future, and it's going to be continued as a booster. So this is something that we are now thinking about, that just like the flu, we may have to actually live with this disease, and therefore we have not stopped. Some companies actually now have called it quits, in developing this. They were here and they went out for economic reasons. But I think we have to have a pipeline so that we are all ready to use our own vaccine, inshallah, in the future. Now, the number of vaccines doses, again, if you look at this, administered per 100, you have over 100 for UK, Israel, United Arab Emirates. It's over 100 because each person needs to have 2 doses, for example. And also, they some are not accounted for because they are probably illegal immigrants and so on. So US is about 100 already, and Malaysia is peaking at 60% of our population, which is good for people who receive even one dose. So we are doing well in terms of vaccine, which is great because our cases are also very high. And you look at this again another way, at least 1 dose, we're already 40% of our population, 40% of our population have already received the vaccine, which is also very great. This is greater than expected, and I'm very pleased because initially we were only aiming for 300,000 a day, and now for the consecutive, I think 7 days or 8 days already, we have been able to maintain more than 500,000 every day, which is great. So total vaccine administered is now about 4 billion out of the 7 billion people, mainly in Asia. And every day, the world sees close to about 38 million vaccines being delivered, which is also great. Mostly of these are in Asia. So I'm just giving you an overall first, how the situation is in terms of the disease, what is the situation in terms of the vaccination, and that's just to give you what is the real situation at the moment. I'm going to take a break or not, or stop on that point and now move on to explaining a little bit about vaccine. Some of you may already know this, but I think for the advantage of some others, let's look at what is vaccine all about. Now, when immunologists like myself and others, when we talk about a vaccine, we always think about the ideal vaccine. The ideal vaccine needs to be effective, obviously. It needs to be immunogenic and not pathogenic. It has to have very low or no side effects whatsoever. If possible, we have to deliver it with a single dose. It needs to be cheap and stable. It must be easy to produce, and it must provide long-term protection. Now, we cannot have all these all the time, and because the situation is very dire at the moment, these two has never been compromised. Okay, scientists will attempt to fulfill all these criteria the best they can, but these two criteria must always be kept, not compromised: the safety and efficacy. I'm stressing this because out there, people talk about vaccine being dangerous and so on. I just want to share this with you. So its safety and efficacy must be there. Okay, it's not a single dose. Now you have to have 2 doses, for example, or even 3 doses for some of the subunit vaccine. It's not cheap, like Pfizer. It's also not very stable. It has to be in minus 80 degrees Celsius. It's probably easy to produce, but it needs specialized facilities to produce this, to put the mRNA into the lipid nanoparticle. And we know now that the durability of protection may not be as long as we hope for. So, but these two must be there. And because of this pandemic, a lot of vaccines are now out just to cater for reducing the burden of disease. Now, if you look at how vaccines are developed in general, okay, we have 2 levels or 2 phases of development. One is the preclinical development, and the other is clinical development. And in the preclinical development, these can take between 10 to 15, 20 years, all right? So you have to understand the pathogen and mechanism of pathogenesis. This thing need not be 100% because, for example, in HIV, we're still looking at this still, okay, so that we know what vaccines to use. As you will already know, HIV does not have a vaccine. Understand how our immune system responds to this pathogen, and then we have to think about the vaccine design. How are we going to design this vaccine? What sort of platform we're going to use? And we have to have this preclinical safety or GLP or good laboratory practice to be done. And then finally, we have to produce a vaccine according to GMP before we move on to the clinical stages of development, which can comprise phase 1, 2, 3, and endorsement or NPRA, or the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency is called in Malaysia. In other countries, it's with different names, and also the phase 4 trial. Now, all these findings from this work, as well as the work that is done here, is going to be published, and for clinical development especially, is going to be scrutinized by the scientific community and presented to independent experts reporting to NPRA to see whether these are really safe and efficacious. So that is not a compromise. Now, all this thing in red actually requires detailed review and safety and efficacy. Even this GLP here, you have to conduct it in a certified lab. In Malaysia, there's only 3 labs. Okay, so if people say, I've already done preclinical study, and we can ask where, if they mention in PPSK, then you know that they're not in GLP lab, all right? GLP, good laboratory practice, is a specific terminology used for the a lab that looks at toxicity and other issues about the vaccine, okay, in animal models. So detailed review and safety, all in red. And after you do the GLP, you have to prepare a dossier that you have to present it to NPRA before even being able to be granted to work in phase 1 studies. So each relevant stage of the study, as I mentioned just now, needs the approval of the NPRA. this is the clinical development of vaccines, phase 1, 2, 3, and licensure, and finally phase 4. Phase 1 is a small scale, less than 100 participants. Phase 2, in the hundreds, up to 1,000. And phase 3, large scale, in the thousands. Okay, we're talking about thousands, like for COVID vaccine is between 25 to 40, 50,000 people being used for phase 3. And these clinical phases is primarily to ensure safety and efficacy, and it gets to be approved by the regulatory authorities like MPRA before they can move to the next stage. So after phase 1, you need to prepare a dossier and present to MPRA before you are allowed to do phase 2, and so on, and phase 3. And even after phase 3, you do need to have to prepare a review by MPRA. This takes a long time. For example, the Sinovac vaccine that comes to Malaysia has 200 over questions being asked by the MPRA before you can actually get approval for rolling out. And after that, post-marketing surveillance, after it rolls out, after you get to the community, there's going to be long-term safety on this, adverse events following immunization, and to look at its effectiveness in the field. So I showed you all that to show you that vaccine development is a complex process, from preclinical research to development to clinical development on many volunteers to ensure that the vaccine that is rolled out is safe and efficacious. All right. So I'm going to move a bit on a little bit of the immunology of how SARS-CoV-2 actually function, the immune response against SARS-CoV-2. So you have these viruses that enters a host cell via, by binding to the ACE2 receptor and the spike protein, the receptor binding domain to the ACE2 receptor. Within the cell, as with any other viruses, they will actually fuse with the vesicles within the cell, cytoplasma, and in the case of SARS-CoV-2, release the RNA genome, and this RNA is then translated into viral proteins, and this is going to be packaged into new viruses, and the virus is going to go out and taken out and ingested by antigen-presenting cell, which will present to the T helper cell, and these T helper cells will release cytokines that will help B cells to produce antibodies, as well as T cells to kill the viral infected cell. This is a typical, very brief, typical immune response against most viruses, especially mRNA viruses and other viruses as well. So this is what we see, all right? So this is the immune response against SARS-CoV-2. And the most important point here is that you have this binding of the receptor binding domain and ACE2 receptor that starts all this, okay? Without this binding, therefore, the virus, this infection will not actually cause disease, perhaps, all right? So all the vaccines that are currently being produced are trying to address this, just trying to actually block this, and you get blocking of the disease. So there are 4 types of vaccines that are currently being produced. There are maybe others, but these are the main ones. Inactivated virus vaccines simply are SARS-CoV-2 that has been killed with heat or chemicals. And, this is an old technology. Many childhood vaccines are also like this, like the polio vaccine, for example. The other one is a subunit protein vaccine against the SARS-CoV-2. Say this is a spike protein that is produced, that are produced by, say, recombinant DNA technology. And this vaccine normally will include adjuvants to improve the immune system, stimulation of the immune system. And a lot of the vaccines currently being produced are using this technology. This is also an old technology. And Novavax, for example, is one of this. This is Sinovac, for example. You also have viral vectored vaccines, use a different type of virus. It's a safe virus. Normally they use adenovirus that is genetically engineered to carry the genes for SARS-CoV-2's spike protein in this. And this will then be delivered into the host cell, and therefore the host cell will now start making the spike proteins. Similarly, for nucleic acid vaccines, encode genetic instructions for the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein into DNA or RNA, okay? And this is delivered, and the vaccines can then allow for the production of the spike protein as well. So this is a new technology. These are fairly old technology, medium range technology, but these are fairly old technology. So these technologies are currently being used. So in doing a vaccine and making a vaccine, we have to understand that it has to imitate the real infection as close as possible, in fact, identical. So if this is the infection, you get this infection, you get the antigen presenting cell, presenting the T helper cell, helping the B cells to make antibodies and T cytotoxic cells to kill viral infected cell. So the vaccines that are produced will have to actually cause this phenomenon to happen. So there's several, these 4 vaccine platforms act by, for example, the mRNA lipid nanoparticle infecting the cell, and the spike protein are produced, and the spike protein are taken up by the antigen presenting cell and presented to T helper cell, or the antigen presenting cell itself can be infected with the mRNA containing a lipid nanoparticle, like the Pfizer BioNTech, or you can have an adenovirus that also delivers this to the antigen presenting cell, or goes through another cell and producing the spike protein that is taken up as this. And you can also have subunit proteins, subunit against the spike protein that will also go through the same process, and also inactivated virus that will also go through the same process. So this actually mimics the actual infection, but you know that all these vaccines are very safe, and they are efficacious because they use the same mechanism that is in our body. But the question arises, why does it seem that the COVID-19 vaccines have been developed very quickly? I think a lot of people think about this and they ask this question because I said earlier that vaccine production can be between 15 to 25 years, which is true. Now, there are very many reasons for why it seems that the COVID-19 vaccine has been developed very, very quickly. Number one is technological advancement. So, you know, with technology and robust scientific development has caused a lot of things to be done faster. So you can imagine that the first handphones will take years to build, and now every year you have a new version, maybe, you know, and they compete with each other. So that's because of technological advancement, and we heard about technological advancement, AI just now from Prof. Asma. So technological advancement is there. So we have this make things to be done quicker in a way, but it has to be based on robust scientific evidence. It cannot just go through just because of technology. A lot of the scientific development and questions need to be asked and answered before you can move to the next stage. Number two is the sharing of information. And here I think we can credit the scientists in China because they got the full genome sequence of the original Wuhan strain, and immediately, within weeks, they actually posted this whole genome sequence online. So everybody in the world can now work on it from 10th January onwards, and the vaccines within months are being produced from here. Okay. Now, why is it produced within months? Because a lot of these platform technologies have already been done before. For example, actually the mRNA vaccine that we are now using has been developed and enhanced for the last 30 years. The 3 decades of work that has gone through work on the mRNA, from making it more stable, making it able to do what it needs to be done, and has actually been tested against other diseases. Okay. In fact, they have been tested, went to phase 1 trial, but never went out because that particular disease, I think in that case is Ebola, has been abolished during that time very quickly. One of the 3, either Ebola, MERS, or SARS. So they have been tested, but they never get to the field or to us because I think they saw at phase 1. Also, there's the availability of numerous test participants, and this is perhaps the most important point of why it has developed very quickly. Now, to set up a phase 3 trial, it might take about 5 years for you to do so, because it's not easy to set up a phase 3 trial. So you have to convince people to be part of the trial, which is not easy, and you have to set up a trial site, which needs to find a place where they have the most disease being occurring. In the case of COVID-19, this is a global pandemic. It's occurring everywhere. And so the site is everywhere. And people, so many people. So all you need to do is to put an advertisement and say, please take part in this. And you know, in the country of 20, 30 million, you need about 40,000 people. So this is the greatest help that has made this very fast, all right? So no cutting of corners. It's just because the opportunity was there for a lot of test participants to be available. Number 5 is the availability of funding from international collaboration, from CEPI, from COVAX, and Sanofi even offered to produce Pfizer's vaccine because the capacity is not enough. So that's how this international collaboration between two competing companies. And don't forget, the US has actually poured in billions of dollars to develop the vaccine. So suddenly, funding is available, and the authorities allow for overlapping phases of development. So we are on phase 1 or phase 2, and the results are already good. You keep on discussing with the regulatory body, and you're allowed to move from phase 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3 as fast as possible, just by recruiting more people after you present your data to the regulatory authorities. And some pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer take a risk, because even when their vaccines were not approved, they already make so many doses of the vaccine worth about $2 billion USD, just to be prepared to be rolled out. And they are willing to take that risk that if it is not approved, then they will have to destroy this vaccine. So what I'm trying to say, although it seems to be fast, okay, which is good, but there is no shortcut to safety requirements. And all this takes place with the regulatory agencies of individual countries deciding to push the vaccine out. And we've heard of what is known as the EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization in the US, whereby this is now used because of the pandemic. EUA is not used for any other diseases except when it is a pandemic. And it is used not only for vaccine, it's used for therapy and even diagnostics. So that is why it seems that the COVID-19 vaccine seems to have been developed very quickly. So it's not cutting corners, as some people would actually suggest, all right? So when the vaccines were rolled out, we get some real-world vaccine efficacy or effectiveness against the disease. Okay, this is old, it's in March 2021, but it still holds true up to today. In the US, for example, published in reaction vaccine, Pfizer, BioNTech, or Moderna is 89% effective in the real world. Remember, when you do the phase 1, 2, 3 trials, they are given to volunteers who are healthy and aged between, say, for Pfizer, 16 to 60, 16 to 59, for Moderna, 18 to 59. All right. So when you roll it out, it goes beyond that. Above 59, people get the vaccine as well. So in the real world, 89%, which is good, and 60% lower hospitalization rate compared to unvaccinated persons. In the UK, 86% for Pfizer-BioNTech among healthcare personnel. When we talk about healthcare personnel, they see patients regularly. They are more exposed to COVID than other people. So this is a very good effectiveness percentage. And adults aged more than 80 years, including those with multiple underlying diseases, the efficacy is about 85, which is also extremely good. In Israel, we've seen that Pfizer-BioNTech is 90 to 94% effective against a spectrum of illnesses from asymptomatic, symptomatic, and severe COVID-19. And there seems to be a 4-fold lower viral load compared to unvaccinated persons, showing that perhaps vaccinated person has a probability of reduced transmissibility. So the real-world vaccine effectiveness, as reported by CDC in early March in 2021. Now, what is the relationship between neutralization level and protection? So a lot of people talks about this now. This is a very current concern to many people. How do I know I'm protected? So this is just to compare. If you look at the diagram here, to compare with various vaccines. And the blue line, these whiskers are 95% fit, okay? So there are confidence intervals of 95% that way. protective efficacy, and that way in terms of the neutralization level of antibodies. And this is used as one, and all these vaccines on the right are more than one, and on the left are less than one. So you can see this is Moderna, this is the Novavax, the Pfizer, and this is actually Sputnik V, Sputnik 5, that's AstraZeneca, and this is another one that I can't remember, and this is Sinovac. All right, so when we see that, we say, oh, this is better than that. But I want to throw a caution to everyone. Remember that these vaccines has been tested in different populations under different settings. So direct comparison may not be appropriate. Let's take, for example, Sinovac. Sinovac, percentage of about 50% was actually conducted among healthcare workers in Brazil at the peak of coronavirus, when you have hundreds of thousands of people get infected. So the frontliners are the ones are also easily getting infected. So so when they repeated this, or they did the Sinovac experiment again in Turkey, for example, among the general population, healthy individuals, the efficacy jumps to about 90%. So this is about 50%, that's about 90% in the different settings. So we cannot really compare because they are all done with different, so they're not, if you do an experiment, that means it's not a very good control, all right? So they're not done on the same individual. So just to throw this caution, this is my note to this paper, because I don't think they mentioned this. So I need to mention this because it's important for us to realize, and I don't want people going out there and say, I don't want Sinovac because it's not very efficacious. It's not that, all right? In Turkey, Sinovac is about 90% protective. Now, people also talk about vaccine durability. You are still unsure whether you're going to have long-term protection. Remember when I say that the ideal vaccine has to provide long-term protection, but hey, this is a pandemic. You don't have time. If everything works, you've gone through phase 3, let's roll it out first, all right? But from early studies, from phase 1 studies, okay, phase 1 studies, more studies are going to be conducted now, and including in Malaysia, and including in Malaysia is KKM is doing it, and also USM, we are doing it. An early study shows that the neutralizing antibody persisted for about 6 months, but some people believe that it can last at least a year. But still, the results are not out, or we do not know the vaccine durability there. But there are mathematical modeling that has been carried out. Okay, so there's also the question of whether if the vaccine durability and protection is lowered, which we do not know yet, what is the threshold, do we need booster doses? That's another question that now people are talking about. But certainly you can see that from a lot of studies, and this is one example from Nature Reviews Immunology, recently published last month, that the amount of neutralizing antibodies and antibodies against the various peptides of COVID-19, CD4, CD8, and CD4, CD8, they are all going down. Memory B cells is going up, which is not surprising in a way, because you get the vaccine, you get more and more, you may be exposed to the real infection, and there are some. So these are all the references for that, published in Nature Reviews Immunology. And mathematical modeling shows that vaccine durability, if you look at time from 50 days to 250 days, from 0 to 250 days, depending on the initial efficacy and using a certain mathematical modeling formula, it will go down. So the higher the initial efficacy, perhaps it goes down slower. Okay, if you talk about 99%, which no vaccine has said that they have 99%, but this is a mathematical modeling, and you go down to about 96% at 250 days. And a growing body of evidence have suggested that vaccinated people as a whole are less likely to have even asymptomatic infection, and potentially less likely to transmit the disease to others. But more work is currently being done. This is also in March. So work in this area is also currently being done. Then people talk about the side effects of vaccination. Now, all these are common side effects. Side effects like these are common for a lot of different types of vaccines, okay? So even these are reported. So when these are reported, they say that the adverse reaction, there's a lot of reporting. But injection site pain, and those of you who already got the vaccine, I bet you would have this injection site pain. Okay, so there's fatigue, headache, muscle pain, fever, and so on and so forth. I would imagine that some of this is actually more of a psychological effect, not some, a few of this. So majority are true, but some are not. But a lot of people are on about this adverse reaction. I just listened to someone that's posted in social media saying that 50,000 people have died from vaccination. I mean, it's really ridiculous. And look at the adverse reaction. I prepared this yesterday and I had to do a lot of research. So these are severe adverse reactions are actually extremely rare. Now, what are the causes? Okay, first, the vaccine use, Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca, adverse condition reported anaphylaxis. And of these people who reported anaphylaxis, more than 80% already had a history of anaphylaxis. It's not something new. So you're talking about per million of number of cases. Pfizer reported 5, Moderna reported 3. So there's 3 per million, 5 per million, and AstraZeneca 10 per million. Therefore, the percentage of occurrence of anaphylaxis is about 0.00003% to 0.0001%. And nobody has done this. If you look in the general population, and these are information published before even COVID. This is 0.001 to 0.07. It's actually higher than this. All right, but people make it a big issue. So the percentage of general population is like that. You look at Janssen and Janssen and Moderna in terms of thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, it's 3. Moderna is 0.006 per million. That brings you down to this. This is for this 3, okay? And in the general population, it's about tens of fold higher, published in JAMA, okay? This is for thrombosis. For Guillain-Barré syndrome, that has been attributed to J&J, about 10.5, and this is the preliminary report. That means that it has not been confirmed that it is because of J&J, and that's 0.001%. And you can see that this is higher, slightly higher than that, and this is published in 1990. This is in a general population, not population who are susceptible, all right? So, sorry. And myocarditis and pericarditis that is being drummed out at the moment, 4 per million. And in the general population, this is surprising. I had to do a lot of research on this. Not a lot, but I had to read about 2 or 3 papers to confirm this. 1 to 5% of myocarditis following acute viral infection. So in the general population, it's already very high. And death, 0 after investigation following autopsy. Number of cases of death reported, yes, is high. And the authorities do actually ask anything to be reported. But each report must be followed by investigation. And after investigating the number of deaths, this is in the US where they can do autopsy, 0 is attributed to the vaccine. All right. Whereas in the general population, people 0.0035% actually die with unknown causes. I'm not talking people who die from accident or shooting or whatever, but these are unknown causes. They don't know why. So this is comparable. So if you look at the severe adverse reactions even, it is negligible, all right, with the use of vaccine. However, authorities take this very seriously. If you are vaccinated and you get this within a few months, then they will actually investigate to make sure that it is not. And already in that investigation, J&J, there's some issue with J&J with regard to myocarditis, if I'm not mistaken. So, but that is still preliminary, and they are going to look at that a bit deeper. So this is something that again we need to understand. There are severe adverse reactions, but we need to ascertain that the severe adverse reactions are actually due to the vaccine. So reports of death after COVID-19 vaccination are rare. More than 342 million doses of the vaccine has been administered in the US up to a few days ago, 26 July. And during this time, the number of deaths is 0.019%, 0.02%, say, among the people who received a COVID-19 vaccine. and this is required. FDA requires healthcare providers to report any death after COVID-19 vaccination to VAERS. This is vaccine-associated or adverse reaction something, even if it is unclear whether the vaccine was the cause. So just report first, and all these reports will be investigated. And when they investigated this, looking at the death certificates, autopsy, and medical records, they have not established a causal link to COVID-19 vaccines. So this is from the CDC, US. This is up to July 26, 2021. Now for us here, so, when we look at people who are in category 1, so it starts from the right here, category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I hope people know about these categories in COVID. Category 1 is tidak bergejala, no symptoms, mild symptoms. You have pneumonia, and you have pneumonia that requires oxygen, and this requires critical care. So you look at this, and people who are vaccinated are in the green, all right? So less and less green, percentage-wise is less, all right? You do get people who are quite high here with mild, but when I asked KKM just a couple of days ago, the history of vaccination actually does not comprise of people who are fully vaccinated only. Okay, everybody who receives a vaccine will be here. So if you have one dose and you get infected, or you get infected before you get the dose, they will consider you as condition of vaccinated individuals. And normally, when they look at the reports, I know of a couple that usually the vaccinated people who have this disease, especially at the category 3, 4, 5, are those with comorbidities anyway, and they have not completed the vaccination. So there's one case that is flying left, right, and center, and this is from a USM retiree. So we found out that although he had 2 doses, he had the infection maybe even before the second dose was given, and he had diabetes and heart problems and so on. So those who actually are in these categories are usually with comorbidities. Let's look at Singapore. Singapore reports the same thing. Category 3 and 4 and 5, you will see that the completely unvaccinated is highest. Partially vaccinated, that means only 1 dose or not 2 weeks after the second dose, and fully vaccinated is only a few in category 3, very few. There's 1% in category 4, none in category 5. So this is Singapore, and the latest today, we saw this from a recent report from Sydney. If you look at this again, for those out of 2,700 reported cases, majority are red, not vaccinated, partially vaccinated, unknown, and fully vaccinated in blue is virtually absent from the tree in bottom. You have a little bit there for the number of cases. So this shows really that vaccination does protect against the severe illness, and this needs to be propagated well. Majority of people in the US, CDC reports that 99.5% of people who are COVID positive are unvaccinated, all right? So we have to know that vaccine actually reduce this effect. But we need to, there's another thing that I want to talk about, even if you're vaccinated, that you have to be very careful. Now, we also talk about the current variants of concern. There's a lot of variants of concerns out there, and this is just the genetic makeup of where the mutations have occurred. For example, for the alpha strain, the so-called the UK strain, the alpha strain, it actually differs from the original strain and from the D614 strain by having a Y at the end position 501. So now we have N501Y for alpha, beta has more mutation, so does gamma, okay? And kappa or delta and kappa have others. So kappa is actually a variant of interest, not of concern yet. So we're talking about delta, it has others. And all these mutations actually increase the affinity of binding of the virus to the ACE2 receptor. And the clinical impacts is that they have increased transmissibility, probably increase in pathogenicity, and there's a risk of immune escape. All right, so there are issues here with the variants of concern. So if we look at these current variants of concern, we have the gamma, which is Brazil, started with alpha, all right, in the UK. It's just renamed by the Greek letters alpha, gamma, beta in South Africa, and delta in India. And really, hopefully, these are the only 4 variants of concern. And I really hope that's the case, but we don't know. For example, the delta strain was originally a variant of interest, but has now been classified as variant of concern. Variants of interest are, you have a few. You have epsilon and iota in the US. There's another one, lambda in Peru. Brazil reported another variant of interest, eta in Nigeria, kappa also in India, and we have theta in Philippines. So all these variants of interest are that they have mutations, but at the moment the phenotype is as the ones that we see with the usual disease. But as I mentioned just now, for India, for example, the Delta strain, initially they thought it's like that until the transmissibility is increased and it becomes a variant of concern. So what are the results that we see with regard to variants, to the variants? So this is a cohort in Germany where this is the usual natural infection, looking at people who are positive, and you get the serum of this. They have this number of effective dose, 50. Obviously, the infection initially was against the Wuhan strain or D614, the alpha, and you get this fairly modest amount of antibodies. It's not reactive against beta or delta. But in terms of vaccinees, in this case, I think the vaccination was with the AstraZeneca, if I'm not mistaken. You get higher number of neutralizing antibody. And with Pfizer, for example, here, pre-dose, okay, just week 3, that means just after the first dose, nothing happens. And get the week 8 after vaccination, that means week 5 after second dose, you have a lot more, but it's not as good against the beta strain from South Africa. So, yeah, you have some, reduction, lower against the delta and the beta strain for the Pfizer. So, when you look at this is a slide that you probably need to adjust your eyes to. I got this from somewhere. It has a black background. Let's go through it very slowly. So these are the variants, all right? And the areas of high infectivity, the original all over the world. Alpha has gone through there. Beta, mainly here. I'm not sure whether Malaysia has any beta. Delta strain, these are high activity. Yeah? So that means that although it's all over the world, it's, these are the high activities, and gamma is here, primarily in Brazil, and spread to Mexico, and you have some in Scandinavia. So is it more transmissible? Yes, alpha seems to be about 50%, so does beta, about 50% more transmissible than the original, and delta is highly transmissible, and so is gamma, depending on the situation. And percentage of more serious symptoms is also there. You have about 50% more serious than the original. This one is same as original. This is unclear, but we now know that delta is quite devastating. Gamma is same as original. So we are very worried about this delta strain. Does the vaccines that are currently being rolled out work? Yes for this and yes for this. But for others, it is weaker and much less, but still said to be effective. Looking at this same format of presentation again, so you look at these variants, original, alpha, beta, delta, and gamma, okay? And symptomatic or not after 2 doses. Symptomatic COVID, you managed to protect against symptomatic COVID for Pfizer, 95% against the original, 91% against alpha, 83, 76, and 90+% for Pfizer, and this is for AstraZeneca, all right? And whether it protects against severe COVID or hospitalization and death after 2 doses, both Pfizer and AstraZeneca is quite high, okay? You look at this Pfizer, you have 97, 92, 97, 96, which is quite good. So fortunately, the current vaccines that we have do protect to some extent the variants that we have. So vaccination needs to be taken as fast as possible still. People talk about heterologous prime boosting, Okay, whether you can give one and receive the booster with another. We're talking about this viral vector versus mRNA. And in general, if you look, you can get, seems to be equal or better outcome compared to homologous prime boosting with the mRNA. You compare this mRNA and the viral vector with RNA, same here. It's about the same. It's about the same. But for CD8, seems to be much better if you have this prime boosting. Viral vectors first, for example, with AstraZeneca, followed by Pfizer, gives you better response with the CD8 compared to if you use Pfizer in both situations or AstraZeneca for both situations. So prime boosting, a lot of people ask about this because of the supply of vaccine that is not forthcoming in many countries in the world. Therefore, if you already get one vaccine and you cannot wait for that same vaccines to be supplied, can you take another vaccine instead? To me, as an immunologist, I would say yes, but it looks like viral first and followed by RNA is better. In another experiment that I'm not going to show you, or I'm not sure whether I'm going to show you or not, if you put mRNA first followed by the viral vector, it is not as good as you put the viral vector first before the RNA. People also ask about what about pregnant women. This is just a graph taken very recently. It's published in JAMA last week. And the cumulative incidence of SARS-CoV-2 in vaccinated versus matched unvaccinated, age-matched, unvaccinated pregnant women. You can see that if you're vaccinated, you're going to be protected, twofold protection compared to the matched unvaccinated people in the pregnant women group. So we would like to encourage all pregnant women to get vaccinated as well. So people now talks about so many things, and among the most important is actually to beat the variants, and some vaccine developers are already looking at it. They are producing variant-specific vaccines. People are also suggesting maybe we have to have more boosters with the variant-matched vaccine. So you may already have your Pfizer's or Moderna or Sinovac, and if new vaccine come out with the variant match, you can use that as boosters or multivalent vaccine against all the different types of variants. Or even when you boost with the original vaccine that was seen from the data that I showed you just now, that can even be protective against the variants. And Pfizer, for example, are also discussing with regulatory authorities to cut short the process of registration of the new vaccine to expedite review process, similar to the influenza vaccine approval pathway. As you know, influenza vaccine does not have to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 every time. It's already there. All you need to do is to change the hemagglutinin and neuraminidase component for that particular circulation for the year that is predicted, and you can get approved and used straight away. I talked about the human behavioral issues, and this is something that's also very important. And you can see here that the non-compliance to SOP has resulted in this peak here way back in February, March last year. People get complacent and they remove their masks, they don't have social distancing, and suddenly you get a spike in all this. Particularly here we see is actually from India, all right? That the spike actually occurred, and also in Brazil to some extent, and you get this spike. So human behaviors need to also be controlled. It is not very easy. After 1 year or 2 years of PKP, people tend to forget, but they also get bored and they get fatigued with all this SOP, and a lot of things can happen. So we need to think about how to manage that as well. And looking at Malaysia as well, you can see only 1/3 of Malaysians have still even not registered. So what is that? It's very difficult to understand. So it's really up to all of us to actually encourage as many people to be registered. This is the data from yesterday, and only 20.5% of million actually registered of a population of 32 million. So this is also worrying because of the low registration. For example, in Kelantan, because of low registration, you don't get people to be vaccinated as fast, as many as possible. So you can see some of these states that have problems. Some problems are not because they don't want to. For example, in Sabah, it's mainly because they are not accessible to this. So the government is looking at ways to allow vaccination to take place as fast as possible, and they can go house to house and do that. And again, talking about human behavior, these are well-known facts that the risk factor from the low risk to the highest risk, and you look at the high risk here, attending of wedding and funeral, there's already a few in Kelantan that already formed clusters because of that, attending this. Of course, nightclubs are there, right out there, indoor bars, so all these things that we still stop routinely wearing a face mask. And this is amazing. This is high risk. And you see a lot of people wearing masks, but below the nose. So here, education is very important. So all these human behavioral aspects needs to be, reiterated, and hug or shake hands. You can see even this when one of the family members is going to be taken away to put in the quarantine area, and they just give hugs and shake hands and so on. So that's a problem. And this is a major problem. This is a recent publication out from the Center for Digital Misinformation or something like CCDH. And there is a dozen people here named in this document. I was thinking of naming them here, but I thought maybe not. Don't want to get into trouble. That the disinformation, most of them have their own agenda. Some of them wants to sell their herbal remedies for COVID and so on, and they are responsible for 65% of anti-vaccine propaganda in the social media. Okay, they just want to sell their products. They talk about these, herbal remedies, and we are not far from that. I want you all to know, when you start listening to some of these people outside, even in our community, they will say so many things. You eat this, you eat that. I don't want to mention because it might be sensitive to some of you, but this herbal plus this plus that, you will be better off than taking a vaccine. Now, this information needs to stop, and that's why I think science needs to prevail. So I won't spend too much time here, and even here, people talk about this criticism on the emergency use authorization that is put up. And people say, how safe is the vaccine? The mRNA vaccine is a new vaccine. It's not been tested. So it's just like this cartoon is showing you that, but do we know the long-term effects of fire extinguishers? And when he is inside a burning house, we are inside a burning house with this pandemic. It's not that we can use anything, but we use a fire extinguisher. What does it mean? It means that we use a vaccine or any other therapies that may be approved later. We use a vaccine or therapy that has gone through some level or extensive level of authorization, of assessment by the right people in the area, not any anyone. These are specialized people who are in the area. So again, here, human behavior is this problem. And we hear this even from professors, all right, from people in the health and medical sector. How do we know this is safe? When I ask them, okay, how do you know it is safe? How can we test whether it's safe? There is no testing except the best of our ability. We use it now because of the data that has been presented for phase 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So coming to ending soon. So this is just to demonstrate to you that if there are no vaccines, and this is not the case for COVID now, or people refuse to get vaccinated or they're not vaccinated, diseases can easily spread from one population to another. All right. So you can see these two red men here on the left. Within a few days, you get everybody red. And this is the main cause of the COVID-19 clusters that we see in weddings, in funerals, in get-together, in Hari Raya, coming across Rentas Negeri and so on, okay? And even if vaccine is available, all right, but people do not want to get vaccinated, you get the same scenario because disease can still spread among those who are not vaccinated that we also see in the country. And if 1/3 of Malaysians are still refusing to register or refuse to take vaccine, then this disease will be with us much, much longer, all right? Unless we have this, when the majority of the population are vaccinated, then the disease somehow will be able to be controlled, what is known as herd immunity. And this is our collective responsibility. We need to get this message through, and all of us needs to be vaccinated. And we have to, at the same time, even after being vaccinated, need to be following the SOP. I mentioned just now that ethnicity seems to have, a role in this, and this is actually taken from the US in a way, and Black Americans as compared to white being one here. The number of risks are 2 times more, 3 times more, seems to be higher, okay, in males here than females. If you're Pakistani, Bangladeshi, other ethnicity, and we look down here, Chinese are much lower. So maybe Malays is somewhere here. And maybe this somewhat explain why in Malaysia, although we have very high number of cases, our death rates is about less than half of the world average. But I don't want that to actually mar your thinking about it's not as dangerous. It is dangerous. But this is just to explain to you the relationship between ethnicity. But what about the environment? We published this recently. This is from our group, that maybe the lethality in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly these people are blacks, but maybe because the high immune modulation because of the environmental factors of being infected with helminths, somehow reduce their maybe severity and susceptibility to COVID-19. Needs to be proven by more experiments, but this was published in Frontiers in Immunology. And some of you may already got this. This is to me a premature advertisement to measure your antibody levels after you get vaccinated. But this, I've seen 3 companies already, or 3 or 4 companies already selling this service. To me, this is premature. It doesn't tell you anything, even if you send to them and they say, okay, your antibody levels is whatever, okay, 1,000 international units. What does that mean? What is 1,000 international units, or what is 50 international units? Because the correlate of protection is not there yet. We have not established what is protective and what is not. So this is, again, I think is premature to advertise, and it may be detrimental because people may go here, they have this level of antibody, they thought they were protected, and what if you go and you are negative? Is there going to be counseling? What is the next step that these hospitals and clinics, as well as lab, going to advise to the people taking this? So I do not encourage people to do this because it has no meaning at this point in time. So other controversies are also there. We talk about vaccine passport. We talk about vaccination, benefits and challenges. This is another challenge. Is vaccine passport fair or not? Is there going to be people who are going to have fake passport, like fake vaccine that we've seen even in Malaysia? That was very surprising. Once you start charging for vaccine, you are going to get people who are going to reap some benefit. So vaccines need to be free so that nobody gets advantage of, buying vaccine. So what about the vaccine passport? This is an issue that is being debated, but I'm going to talk mainly about this number 2, allowing fully vaccinated people to travel across borders. That is being talked about in many quarters. Personally, I do not agree. The reason I don't agree is because fully vaccinated people can also get infected. All right? The virus does not know whether you are fully vaccinated or not. They don't care. They will infect whenever they will infect. And with the Delta strain, the latest result from CDC have shown that whether you're fully vaccinated or not, the amount of virus that are in your nasal cavity after you are infected with Delta is the same. Therefore, you may not show these severe symptoms, but you can carry the infection and infect others. And that's why fully vaccinated people, to me, needs to stay home as much as those who are unvaccinated, needs to follow the SOP as much as possible until the situation allows us to actually do that more freely. When we have herd immunity, for example, when the majority of nations are vaccinated, maybe then everybody can move around, all right? But I do not want people, my personal view, fully vaccinated people to think that they are, they can do things that others can't. And that goes to number 3, that people who are not vaccinated are denied certain privileges. Yes and no. If you're not vaccinated, maybe you shouldn't actually be in crowds, especially in crowded places. I'm not saying that fully vaccinated people can, but if you're not non-vaccinated, you have to be a bit more careful. So some privileges people are talking about may not be open to non-vaccinated people, like traveling and so on. So these are some controversies that are still evolving, dynamic. People are discussing about this, and it's good for us to actually be aware of this rather than just know about the science, as I mentioned just now. So what do we need to do, and what do we need to know? So widespread and proper advocacy for vaccine rollout is very important, and each one of us have a role to play, not only for us and our own family, but for the community. And if already infected or vaccinated, okay, most likely you won't get as sick as before, and because you are probably sufficiently protected somewhat, but you can still get infected, as I mentioned. Getting infected doesn't mean that you have the disease, all right? You can get infected, and if you are infected, you may also infect others. So be careful that you need to actually still follow tight SOP. I wrote here for the next 1 to 2 years, perhaps, to ensure that we can control the numbers and manageable levels, bring down close to zero. Now, there are still many things we do not know. The durability of the response to vaccination is still unknown. So people saying that they want to do this antibody test and tell you whether you have antibodies, it's meaningless. You don't need to do that at the moment because we do not know the correlate of protection. Is it the neutralizing antibody per se, or is it other markers that we have yet to actually decipher? And we hope to do this in our lab with the grant that we have. We need to know what is the optimum surveillance tools that are still very vague. Is it the B cell, T cell, or whatever? And would variants cause further pandemics? We do not know. Do we need to develop specific vaccines against these variants? Perhaps we need to do that. And that means more money, more time. And do we need better diagnostic tools? Yes. And therapeutic approaches? Definitely. We need therapeutic approaches to do this. So there are many things still that we do not know, still dynamic about this disease that ensures that make sure that all of us need to actually do what is needed to protect ourselves. So when nature asks scientists to pick 3 of the biggest factors that would drive SARS-CoV-2 circulation in people, and they say this. Number 1 is immune escape, waning immunity, uneven vaccine distribution, which is a major issue, especially to poorer countries. Vaccine hesitancy is also another issue. As I mentioned just now, these people who create disinformation is very dangerous. Lack of political will or animal reservoirs and others. Now, how likely do you think that SARS-CoV-2 will become an endemic virus that is one that continues to circulate in pockets of the global population? Majority say it's very likely. And how do you think SARS can be eliminated from some regions? Can be eliminated? How likely do you think? A lot of people say unlikely or very unlikely. So a lot of people now think that COVID is going to stay with us. All right. So the challenges that I've mentioned just now is a sum of all these evils, if I can call them, of all the COVID-19. We do not know, but it's a short durability of the vaccines. There's continuous mutations of the viruses, and in different geographical areas, herd immunity may not be able to be achieved in such situation. There's uneven availability of vaccine even within a certain country, especially in poor countries. So, for example, in Malaysia, maybe in Sabah, it's more difficult to get vaccine, and the government is trying to address that. Human behavior that we have discussed before, and this delay in vaccination of children. So herd immunity may be difficult to achieve until and unless adolescents and children get vaccinated, because they form a major part or significant part of the population. So does COVID-19 provide a solution, do you think, to return to our usual old normal? My answer, we still do not know, but to me, maybe unlikely. So vaccinating as many people as quickly as possible may help, but a new normal may be in the horizon. So we must get used to things that we are not familiar with. Hopefully we are quite familiar with now with the online teaching and all, including this lecture or this particular keynote that we have to do this way. I'm talking to my computer more. I don't know whether you're all listening. So a new horizon for normality is there. Most importantly, I want to leave this with you all, that please be guided by scientific facts and official announcements, and to ensure that we act rationally, to ensure that we, our loved ones, and the community are protected against COVID-19. All right. So you have this responsibility as postgraduate students all over Malaysia. You are the bearers of scientific facts, and please get yourself updated also to ensure that we can actually protect ourselves and our community. And hopefully Malaysia can get out of this and the world can get out of this pandemic as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the excellent presentation. I think we all hear your presentation very clearly, and the slides was also very clear. I know normally keynote speaker, there is no Q&A. Just to get your consent, are you okay? There are 2 questions.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'll read the first question. It's a known fact that Malaysia is developing COVID-19 vaccine. How long do you think it will be available to the public? Will it still be beneficial because we might already achieved herd immunity by the time the vaccine are ready?
It's a very good question. There are several parts to that question. Number one, yes, I know of about 1, 2, 3, 4 groups in Malaysia that are working on the vaccine. Still very early stages. So we are developing our own vaccines, and as I mentioned earlier, I think every country needs to have their own supply, because if we need boosters, looking at the durability that is going down, then I don't think countries can afford to still buy these vaccines from Faez or of the world, because it's quite expensive and quite difficult to deliver, to roll out as well. You can see how much difficulty there is, the PPVs, the volunteers, and so on and so forth, and it costs billions. So it's important for us to develop our own vaccines. So I don't want to go into details, because I don't know. I know about 1 or 2 only about how well they are going to do it. And so yes. The other thing, you talk about whether it's still beneficial because maybe herd immunity is there. So herd immunity can only be there when people have immunity. All right. So with the waning immunity, maybe herd immunity needs to always be enhanced or be rebooted, So we need to do that. And there are going to be new people being born and so on. Just as we say that we need to have all children vaccinated with the measles vaccine, tuberculosis, polio, and so on. So that is going to be something that is continuous. So yes, it is going to be important for us to have our own vaccines in the future. The main challenge there is going to do your phase 3 trials. Because when you do phase 3, you need to get people who are in the natural environment who are going to contract the disease. So when everybody or majority are going to be vaccinated, how are you going to do phase 3 trials? So this is the trick, that you need to think. And this requires even our regulators to open up their mind, think outside the box. And this is not very easy to do. And we are in discussion. I am in one in Jawatan Kuasa that we're going to be in discussion where the regulators have to think, you don't do phase 3, but how are you going to get your vaccine out when we cannot do phase 3, when a lot of people are already vaccinated? And do we now still continue to buy our vaccines because they are phase 3, are completed? Or we are going to allow for some level of phase 3 within certain strategy. I have some suggestions, but we probably need to talk about that, with the regulators. So that's my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. There is a second question. It sounds like this. There are some reports on the higher effectiveness of mixing different type of vaccines, example Pfizer and AstraZeneca, an additional dose of existing suggested shots, which is the 3rd dose. How will this situation affect the road to achieve herd immunity? Can we reach it even with the current vaccination plan in our country?
Right, with the current vaccination plan, which is quite impressive. I mean, we're talking about Malaysia in 500,000 every day. That's very, very good. So that the aim is within October. I think we reach the amount that we want that was slated for February next year. So with that, activity, herd immunity, inshallah, will be reached as soon as possible. But there's a definition to herd immunity. I don't want people to think about it as, 80% vaccinated, but there's no point kalau Kelantan is only 60% vaccinated. So herd immunity is where that community is. All right, that's important to understand also. So with the third dosing, if it's going to be more protective, then yes. For example, some of the subunit vaccines, they need 3 doses, not 2. But we don't have this vaccine in our country. So like a couple of vaccines from Cuba, for example, needs 3 doses. And they have shown that with 3 doses, they have 5-fold much better neutralizing antibody levels compared to convalescent people. So 3 doses maybe is a high possibility, especially for some types of vaccine. Although BioNTech says that for the Pfizer 2 vaccines is enough, but we can already see some reduction in the durability, which we do not know will be tapered down to a high level or will come down further. Mixing vaccine, as I showed you just now, yes, the AstraZeneca and Pfizer seems to be better for the CD8 protection. And when you don't have enough vaccine, I guess mixing it can be an advantage so that you don't miss out on the vaccination. But this needs to undergo certain trials by itself, right? So therefore, the mixing part needs to be done again with certain trials, and you need to know when to mix what comes first. As I mentioned just now, if you were to do the Pfizer first and then AstraZeneca, compared to AstraZeneca to Pfizer, it gives a different response. From all my own experimental work in animals, mixing vaccine actually are very, very good, but you also need to know when to mix with what sequence. So work needs to be done before we do that. I can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
Right.
I have one from my side. You see, Prof, we know the importance of herd immunity. We know the importance of more people to get vaccinated. But I think although we have a very good facility and strategy, we still did not reach as what we expected, which is for example, as you said, 1/3 is not even registered to be vaccinated. Just a different mode of question. Is it possible for us to make it compulsory for the population to get vaccinated?
I don't think making it compulsory will make the government popular. Some countries will actually force everybody to be vaccinated. And being a democracy that actually a group, our country is everybody, kutuk government in that sense. So I think it's not easy, but I think if it's going to be too slow or nobody, if it stays at this low level, something needs to be done. But I just want to qualify. I believe that majority of those who are not vaccinated or not registered, they don't know how to register. And they cannot register. At the moment, registration is mainly through, through the phone. So that's why the government has opened up other ways of registration. But even that, you need the internet. So I think what the government is trying to do now is actually going from one house to another and just go inside and vaccinate. See, it's better to do that, I think, rather than forcing, because I think with the current rate of vaccination that we have, more and more people are beginning to now understand about vaccination, and they are willing to actually get the vaccine, in Malaysia especially. If we look at the USM community, USM staff, student, and families of staff in USM, already 90% are vaccinated. So the few 2-3% who are maybe anti-vaccine or vaccine hesitant, may not need to be forced at the moment. I think forcing does not augur well with the current situation.
Okay, all right, Prof. Thank you very much. I think we all had a very good session. I can see all these slides are cited in year 2021, where I showed the importance to have a very updated reference when we are, talking about COVID, because the information keep on changing. So I think, Prof, as an expert in this area, we are very fortunate and lucky to have you as a keynote speaker for this session. And I thank you very much for your time and for your effort. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Okay. Thank you Yang Berusaha Professor Dr. Norazmi Muhammad Noor and the moderator Professor Dr. Hamidah Jam Muhammad. It was a very precise and relevant sharing session. We hope this pandemic can be resolved as soon as possible. Remember, always follow the standard population procedures to keep yourself safe. And remember to register for the vaccination. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the session for this morning. We truly appreciate the time that you have spent with us. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank everyone who have joined us this morning. We kindly request you to fill in the feedback form via the link provided in the chat box. For IPAS participants, please be noted the next plenary speech will begin at 2 p.m. Kindly join us through the given link in the email and please do not be late. Thank you and see you all soon.